Isn't it just a bit ironic that two things that we know of came out in 1909, the Schofield Bible and the NAACP? Looks like they needed some of the brethren on their side. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat, and we're going to watch it because, well, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to be talking about Epstein for sure. Das Juden, of course. There's just so much going on that it's insane. And you could have boom weeks within boom weeks. Because if today, because remember, all in the drops, we see 710, 710, right? Well, today's 710. So if you count today and you go forward a week, right? You have to count the 10th. 10th has to be counted. What day do you come up with? 716. The funny thing about July 16th is, what happened in July 16th, 1999? The start, right? That's when Junior's plane went down. Next Wednesday is the 16th. It's a full week. But we're going to be going through a lot of stuff because we did put out a video yesterday, the show we did yesterday. And, listen to those guys. I mean, it just, because you get things start clicking from wherever you're getting information from. Oh boy. And we're going to be talking about Linda Yacario. We're told to watch the water, correct? There's a big reason why. I don't think anybody else picked up. We picked up on it before. We mentioned it before, but it went a little DEFCON, little crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and play this because when we're done with this, I mean, this is something you need to share to all your Christian friends, all of them. Because when you see who this guy really was, because isn't it funny we talked about it before that I'm going to go ahead and share this right now so everybody could see. Oh shit, hold on a second. I need the buttons. There we go. Who does that look like? Remember we said Ted Turner, right? So when you hear the background of Cyrus Schofield, this guy, no. This guy he's sketchier than Epstein right now. Because Epstein influenced, well, I wouldn't say influenced in a good way, but a bad way, a bunch of people. But what this guy did, no. It has ties to Chicago. It has ties everywhere. But remember, so you have the Schofield Bible, right? But then there was something built in Georgia. And it was done under a pseudonym of R.C. Christian. The Georgia Guidestones. See how all this comes about. When you hear the real story about this guy, I think anybody has a Schofield Bible, just throw it out. Just throw it out. It's junk. It's junk. This is all done by the Jews. That's it. All it is. Which Bible they follow? They probably, the Schofield? The footnotes? So I'm going to go ahead and play this. This gets very intriguing.
This is Cyrus Schofield, and in 1909, the prestigious Oxford University Press published his reference Bible, a King James Bible filled with commentary and footnotes on the same page meant to explain the text. But interestingly, Scofield had no formal theological training to speak of, no seminary degree. In fact, Scofield was a pathological liar, a fraud, and a deadbeat who abandoned his family. And yet somehow, this guy was able to create one of the most influential books of the 20th century, a book that convinced generations of evangelicals that the return of the Jews to Palestine was a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, and that unwavering support for the modern state of Israel was part of God's plan for the end of the world. So how does a man like this end up shaping the faith of an entire nation? And in this video, we'll explore this, how he got so popular, and we'll explore many of the claims of his funding and his hidden connections. If you know anything about this topic, you may have recently seen clips floating around social media like this.
And I realized, oh, okay, your Bible was funded. You know, the notations in your Bible was funded by Zionists.
The Rothschild family hired this dude, this pastor in the Deep South. He made a new version of the Bible called the Scofield Bible.
People will often speak about Scofield and his funding with honestly, an unwarranted degree of certainty, which isn't to say that he wasn't a puppet funded by somebody. He most likely was. But the actual evidence isn't quite that direct. It's much more like the JFK assassination. You know, throughout all the documents and files, at no point does it say, we, the government, killed John F. Kennedy. But when you look into it, even for a little bit, it becomes blatantly obvious that the government is complicit to some degree. Likewise with Scofield. There is no document that flatly says, my career was crafted to push a Zionist political agenda. But there really doesn't need to be, because when you follow the breadcrumbs and follow the money, the elite social clubs that embraced him for no reason, and the legal troubles that mysteriously vanished, along with him skyrocketing into fame despite having no legitimate credentials, it becomes blatantly obvious that someone behind the scenes was guiding him. And we'll come back to that shortly, because it is a bit ambiguous when these connections actually start. So, to understand just how unlikely his success really was, and to get a sense of when these connections might have begun, we need to start at the beginning. Also, I'm going to play this sound anytime something suspicious or weird comes up in the story of Scofield's life. Cyrus Scofield was born in Michigan in 1843, coming of age right around the time of the Civil War. When he was 17, he enlisted to fight for the Confederacy, but after less than a year, it's unclear whether or not he was discharged or he deserted. Regardless, he left the army and turned up in St. Louis. He had family there, his sister lived there, and Scofield's sister had married into the wealthy and influential Poppin and Shoto family. Sorry if I mispronounced that. They were some of the main French Catholic families that founded the city, and her husband, Sylvester Poppin, was president of the St. Louis Board of Assessors. So, needless to say, they were pretty powerful and influential, and thanks to this connection, Scofield was able to land a job apprenticing in his brother-in-law's office, where he began learning the ins and outs of land law, deeds, titles, and land grants. And this was pretty significant for Scofield because the Poppin-Shoto family held numerous vague land claims dating back to the French and Spanish colonial rule, and with America increasingly expanding westward, those old claims suddenly became extremely valuable if you can take all these vague, ambiguous boundaries and convert them into segmented, sellable property. And that's where Scofield came in. So it seems like this wealthy French family saw Scofield as useful, and in the aftermath of the Civil War, in an increasingly united Anglo-American nation, it might be beneficial to have a Anglo-Protestant face who could represent their interests. In other words, it seemed like he was being groomed to be a frontman for this powerful French Catholic family. And it's during this period that Scofield reportedly made trips to Washington, likely acting as their representative. And what he did there, who he met there, and the doors these connections may have opened, we really don't know. But this has to play some role, because his social and political position continued to rise. But anyways, around this time, he married his wife, who was from another prominent French Catholic family, which further cemented his place among this elite. And a few years later, in 1869, his family moved to Atchison, Kansas, where Scofield began apprenticing in the law office of John J. Ingalls, a man who would soon become the Kansas state senator. Now, let's talk about Ingalls for a second. What's important to note about John Ingalls is that he was an abolitionist transplant from New England who had come to Kansas in 1858 to sort of weigh the scales in favor of the abolitionist cause. This was right in the middle of what's called Bleeding Kansas, which was essentially the Civil War in Kansas that preceded the American Civil War, which involved violent clashes between Kansans over whether or not the state would enter the Union as a free or a slave state. And things got pretty violent and bloody, and this conflict notably culminated with John Brown's raid in 1859, where an abolitionist named John Brown attempted to seize a federal armory, supposedly to arm and start a slave revolt. This event is often cited as the main catalyst that kicked off the Civil War. John Brown was being likened to Christ himself by abolitionists, or he was likened to being a sort of martyr. But what people don't know about this is that in reality, Brown's raid was orchestrated, armed, and funded by a group of wealthy Bostonian abolitionists known as the Secret Six. Now, John J. Ingalls, although not a formal member of the Secret Six, came from that same radical abolitionist world in Massachusetts, and he came to Kansas during this period to tip the balance permanently in favor of Boston politics. And with Scofield now working under him, Scofield was likely grafted into this network. So when he arrived in Kansas, he wasn't just getting mentored by a random attorney. He was being brought into a network that had already demonstrated its willingness to use any means necessary, including violence and deception, to achieve their political goals. Scofield had to have had some sort of support at this point, and the evidence for this, or some kind of backing, becomes clear when you look at the logistics of his move to Kansas. The Scofields moved with a household of 7 people, and a law apprentice, someone working in a law office, can't afford to support that alone. He had to have received some sort of support or been grafted into something by this point, and you'll see why in the next couple of minutes. So through his work with John J. Ingalls, Scofield began to rise in Kansas politics, and eventually, Scofield, through his connections, was able to become a Kansas state representative. And from this position, he then helped John J. Ingalls become the senator. This part's pretty interesting, because when the election rolled around, as Kansas was preparing to elect a new U.S. senator, the incumbent, Samuel Pomeroy, had fallen out of favor, and people wanted him out. And Scofield was asked to give a suggestion for who should run, and he was given the assurance that who he picked would win. And Scofield reportedly suggested Ingalls to run against him. And when they had the election, after all the voting, initially it looked like Pomeroy had won re-election. But as he stood up to give his victory speech, one of the legislators publicly revealed that Pomeroy had offered him a $7,000 bribe, which is a lot of money back then. But he apparently bribed him in exchange for his vote. And then the election was thrown out, and then Ingalls ended up winning the election. Now here's the thing. We already kind of established that Kansas and just the western states in general were pretty corrupt at this time. So a lot of political deals involved money changing hands to some capacity, right? The revelation of Pomeroy's $7,000 bribe was honestly less a shocking scandal and more of political theater to tip the scales in favor of Ingalls. Because in that same room where all of this was exposed, Pomeroy had paid out several of the legislators, right? A lot of them received money from him. The more interesting thing to notice is not the fact that Pomeroy had paid off the legislators. The more interesting question is, why was he exposed and swapped for Ingalls? We'll leave that there for now. But after being accepted to the Senate, John J. Ingalls nominated and elected Scofield as a district attorney. Which brings us to his downfall and the more mysterious and intriguing parts of his life. So, Scofield's time as DA fell apart almost immediately. Like within 6 months, he was forced to resign under a cloud of corruption charges, mostly about bribery. Ironically, he accepted a bribe from Pomeroy, the former Kansas senator. He allegedly bribed Schofield into not prosecuting his bribery case, which is pretty funny. But it is also kind of weird because, as we said earlier, everyone was bribing everybody. The West was corrupt. So, and this is my opinion, it can't be for no reason that Schofield was run out, because he likely could have pulled some strings to get this smoothed over, but it didn't happen. And by the end of 1874, Schofield had abandoned everything. He fled Kansas and left behind his wife and his children, left them poor, and then he vanished from the public life. Following this, Schofield just disappears from the historical record for 3 to 5 years. From 1874 to around 1879 to 80, there's effectively a gap in time where we don't really know what he was doing. His official biographer, Trumbull, claims that Schofield returned to law practice in St. Louis, but this is kind of unlikely, and Schofield probably lied to Trumbull, because Schofield was never admitted to the Kansas or Missouri bar. He couldn't legally practice law on his own, or he couldn't have a law office. So where was he? What was he doing? And we don't really know. And the only reason why it says 3 to 5 years, right, why there's a sort of ambiguous gap, is because where he does pop up in the historical record is for charges of fraud, essentially writing false checks and forging his sister's signature multiple times in that period. It was also alleged at the time that he had served some jail time in Canada. But regardless, this period remains relatively ambiguous until his supposed conversion. It might seem mean, honestly, to say supposed conversion, but I think once you hear the details, it's fine. Around 1879 or 1880, it's alleged that Schofield had undergone a dramatic conversion to Christianity, being led to faith by a man named Tom McPheeters. Now, who was McPheeters? So, Tom McPheeters was a successful and respected evangelical businessman from a prominent St. Louis family. A man who had a reputation for being both deeply devout and very discerning, only working with the most capable and reputable attorneys in St. Louis. Now here's where this gets weird. Schofield claimed that this conversion happened in his own law office, and that McPheeters came in for legal counsel, after which they spoke about the gospel and Schofield decided to become a Christian. But there's a problem with this, because as we established, Schofield wasn't a licensed attorney at the time. So, 1, why would he have a law office? And 2, why would a careful and reputable man like McPheeters seek legal counsel from Schofield? Additionally, Schofield claimed that he was 36 years old when this happened, which would place the conversion around 1879. But this is also the same time when he was dealing with the fallout from his fraudulent activities. So he presumably, he converted and then continued to commit fraud and evade the courts? That doesn't sound right. Additionally, it was also interesting, around this time of his alleged conversion, a St. Louis newspaper reported that a forgery charge against Schofield had been dropped due to lack of evidence, and the report went on to praise Schofield as a gentleman who had held positions of trust, completely whitewashing his prior fraudulent activities. Which rightly leads us to suspect external hands were crafting a false narrative to pave the way for his reemergence, and for his re-entrance into the public eye. After all, if this was a genuine conversion experience, why was he still neglecting his abandoned family, right? Why didn't he go back to his family and make things right? And also, why didn't he make things right with the law? Why was he allowing these mysterious benefactors to solve his legal problems? This is all confusing and ambiguous, but what we do know for certain is that by 1880, Schofield had somehow become connected with Reverend James H. Brooks. So Brooks was one of the most prominent voices in American evangelicalism at the time, being especially known for his strong stance on biblical inerrancy and for popularizing dispensational prophecy in the South. His views were really similar to that of John Nelson Darby and the Plymouth Brethren, and he is reported to have had an immense influence on Schofield, who would later refer to Brooks as a, quote, father in the faith. And it was under Brooks's mentorship that Schofield began to absorb this dispensational framework that would later define his work. Brooks was also instrumental in bringing D.L. Moody to St. Louis for his 1879 to 1880 evangelistic campaign, and through Brooks, Schofield was introduced into Moody's inner circle. This is the weird part here, right? So barely a few months earlier, Scofield was writing false checks and committing fraud, and now he's becoming a part of D.L. Moody's evangelism crusade. If you don't know, D.L. Moody is the guy in evangelicalism, right? He was incredibly popular. He was like the Billy Graham of that day. He was the most famous evangelist at the end of the 19th century. And yet, somehow, despite his shady past, lack of formal training, Cyrus Scofield found himself being one of Moody's key associates. This is really suspicious and weird. Why was he there? How did he get there? This is really weird, considering the turnaround. He goes from fraud to presumably a Christian, and rather than going back to his family, who he abandoned, instead now he joins D.L. Moody's evangelism campaign. This is weird, right? And it's especially weird when you think about the money, too. So these campaigns, they weren't paid positions. They were basically freelance, unpaid ministry, and you had to cover your own living expenses and travel and food. Yet somehow, Scofield was not only allowed into helping out on the campaign, but he was able to afford his own provisions and board. This is weird. How was he supporting himself? Also, how did he ingratiate himself into this group so quickly? So much so that by 1882, Scofield was given a license to preach and was given a local congregational church to be the pastor of. Less than 3 years after his legal troubles. He was given this despite having no formal education, no theology degree, no seminary training. In fact, he would lie about having a doctorate in divinity. The timeline of this is just absolutely insane. It makes no sense. Most people spend years studying before entering ministry. I went to a Bible college. I've seen how long it takes to do that. Scofield went from like a disgraced fraudster to licensed pastor in under 3 years. That's ridiculous, right? Now, as I said earlier, it's like the JFK assassination. Nowhere does it say we killed JFK, but when you just look at these connections, it's obvious someone was funding it, right? The timeline is insane. And you see these little snippets all over the place. Like in 1901, Scofield was preaching a sermon at Moody's Church in Chicago, and he casually mentioned something about, when I'm in London, as if that were just like a normal thing, like he goes to London all the time. There's no public record of him going to London prior to writing the Scofield Bible. So who sent him to London? Why was he there? How does he afford going on transatlantic trips like that? And yet somehow Scofield, ignoring the fact that he somehow was able to become connected to D.L. Moody, the most popular evangelist of that day, ignoring all of that, he had just all this money that wouldn't make sense. Scofield had multiple homes that he would just live at while he's traveling. Scofield clearly had some kind of connection, which is what leads us to talk about the Lotus Club. This is probably the most significant and most telling connection. This one is the source of the, quote, conspiracy theories about Scofield. Because really, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just the most blatant of of the evidence when it comes to the money aspect. So, in 1901, Cyrus Scofield was admitted to membership in what's called the Lotus Club, which was an elite, invitation-only social club in Manhattan that catered primarily to journalists and artists and cultural influencers, right? It wasn't just like any drinking beer with the bros kind of thing. This was a big deal, right? The membership included former presidents like Grover Cleveland and Teddy Roosevelt, and media figures like Joseph Pulitzer or Mark Twain even. It was a lot of big names. And somehow, Scofield was nominated to be a part of that, right? This is prior to making his reference Bible, which came out in 2009. He was admitted in 2001. And there's no way that he could have afforded it. There was membership fees and there was annual dues plus the costs of meals and rooms. There's no way Scofield would have been able to afford this from his ministry work alone. And his membership was sponsored by a wealthy man named Horatio Nelson Fraser and seconded by John Elderkin, who was a key figure within the club's committees. Here's the kicker, though. One of the members of the literary committee that had to approve his admission was a man named Samuel Untermeyer. Untermeyer was a powerful New York attorney and political figure and committed Zionist. So this is where the source of the theories typically come from. But they're pretty blatant, honestly. Untermeyer was so powerful that he allegedly, but he did, blackmailed President Woodrow Wilson into putting Brandeis on the Supreme Court. So let's think about this for a second. A man like that was in charge of allowing Schofield into this elite club where he gets to rub elbows with all these powerful men. And up until this point, Schofield's literary output consisted of what? Like tracts and pamphlets. He wrote Rightly Dividing the Word of Truth, but that's it. There's no logical reason why these elite figures would find Schofield to be an acceptable fit for their exclusive club. Unless, of course, his theological work was seen as being able to serve some other purpose. And the fact that Untermeyer accepted Schofield in this group kind of indicates why, right? This was a man whose life was completely removed from the circle Schofield normally ran in. Yet somehow, Untermeyer accepted Schofield into the group, right? So why would a committed Zionist support the membership of a hick Bible teacher? Well, it's obvious because the theology, with its emphasis on a future restoration of Israel, was extremely helpful in getting fundamentalist Christians to back Zionist interests. His theology provided the religious justification for supporting the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. Now, this isn't just to pin all of this on one man. That's dumb, right? The theology was such that all it took was a little push in America for it to spread like wildfire. There wasn't this massive overarching thing, but nevertheless, there was a little bit of manipulation in it. Which brings us to the actual Scofield Reference Bible. Now, the development of the Scofield Reference Bible was financed by a small group of wealthy men. I don't know if they were Zionists or not. Honestly, it's a little ambiguous. And everything about it, it's kind of mundane, the parts of him creating it. There's some stuff, but it's not as interesting. But what's more remarkable is the fact that the Bible was published by Oxford University Press. This is probably next to the Lotus Club. This is one of the more absurd parts of the Scofield Reference Bible. Oxford Press. It's one of the world's most prestigious academic publishers, right? They didn't publish study Bibles, especially ones with such a specific theological agenda behind it, and especially one where the theology was closer to that of a cult rather than that of being mainline Protestant. This was a massive, credible, respected institution that published this book. They didn't publish stuff like this, right? There's no way they didn't do it without some strings being pulled or without some ulterior motive.
Which is why it's important to note the way that Oxford University worked. Prior to the 1950s in England, there were only two main universities, Oxford and Cambridge, with Oxford being the preferred university for aspiring politicians. Which is why it's not a leap to assume that Oxford University Press would function as the sort of propaganda arm of the British Empire in order to present people in politics with the sort of range of opinions that are within the British imperialist orthodoxy. This is why it's also important to note that the second edition of the Scofield Reference Bible came out in 1917, the same year as the Balfour Declaration. Make whatever you want with that. But it is kind of clear in that, in regards to the Balfour Declaration, the Scofield Bible in England helped to prepare the way for Britain's Middle East imperialist ambitions. But as far as the child connections that you hear about, I looked, I can't find anything. But now that might just be me not finding it. So if you know anything, just comment down below and tell me whatever links you have or whatever you got. But apart from that, this has just been a general overview over the life of Schofield.
Adding some context for a lot of the theories you might hear about the funding of the Reference Bible and of just his weird career and the weird money involved. But hopefully you found this helpful. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no document at any point that says, we hired Schofield to promote a Zionist agenda. But when a disgraced fraudster becomes the most influential Bible teacher in American history, and all of his legal troubles disappear, and he's accepted into an elite literary club by a committed Zionist and one of the most powerful men in American politics, the pattern becomes pretty obvious. So with that, If you want any more information over Scofield, but more specifically dispensational theology and the theology that came from his reference Bible, you might find my video about Christian Zionism to be pretty interesting. Thanks for watching. God bless.
You couldn't imagine my shock when Samuel Untermeyer, when his name was brought up. So the funny thing is, you can't, Schofield is like the wife, kids, and everything he just threw out, whatever. But funny thing about Jews are they're really not, how can we say this? They hate Goyim, right? So remember the Cornish British Jews and everything like that. They're all intertwined. Did the Church of England, this is why everybody's like, oh, Hitler's the worst. No, Oliver Cromwell was the worst human being in history. All this ties back to him. Because he was the one that was like, oh no, we need to bring all the Jews in because they're such great people and they have such great passion for lending money. Yeah. And now people see why there's ridges on the quarter. Because they coin clip. They're all filthy. So if you notice the time frame, right? It's right after that Reconstruction era, right? Like a reset. Because don't we have freedom in America to worship who we want? Because if you step outside, if you step over that line, you get everything taken from you. And there's a perfect case in point. L. Ron Hubbard, the Church of Scientology, right? Why didn't he have freedom to worship who he wanted? Who's to say that everything, because remember, the Scofield Bible was hot and heavy then, but you couldn't get 501c3 charter for your church unless you followed the Scofield Bible. And I'm sure there were 14 ministers in the United States that didn't. Because why were the Jews hunting them? I mean, they crucified one right in Arizona. These people are fucking sick. Let's see. Then we have... Oh, and when he mentioned land grants. Land grants. Funny thing about land grants. We went over this a long time ago when we were talking about the missions out in California. All the universities, they were placed under land grants under the Vatican. They came along with the Catholics on these mission trips. Because all these Catholics, all these, the Franciscan order and Dominican order and all that, they were all like, oh, we're going to do mission work. Whoa, 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 whoa. No. All they were doing is they were going and stealing all this property and all this land. So we look at the Native Americans, right? Because the funny thing is, like, they lived like, so they say that they lived out in the wide open, right? What if the Native Americans were actually how can I say this? They were watching all the cathodes and all that for the Tartarians. Now, this is why I came up with this, because if you notice, it just went on a big berserker, kill all Native Americans, kill them all, whatever. Why? But then when we go back to when they were doing the missions, And these Catholics, they're like, oh, we need to go spread the gospel of Jesus. Bullshit. If anybody thinks that the Roman Catholics actually like think of Christ as their God, you have got another thing coming. The Roman Catholicism is straight evil. It's just like Judaism. They worship Satan. Hence the little hats. Man, these people are so fucked up because it was tomorrow in 1933 in New York, it was Albany, when the IRS went through. Because when President Trump mentioned 1913 as the IRS, you're kind of a little incorrect there, sir. That's when the Bureau of Internal Revenue started. The IRS was all bookkeeping. And now look, the Bureau of Internal Revenue went out in the 50s because our debt was paid. But then they needed more money. So I wonder who deals with money. But back to the missions. So the Catholics brought these Jews because the Jews were bloodthirsty, right? That blood libel. But they can only, for their whole, the Passover and all that, the leavened and unleavened bread, right? One has blood, one doesn't. What blood does it have? It's Christian blood. I mean, hell, even during this whole time, they stopped a ship that was headed to Israel. Remember when they shut down the whole Suez Canal and they had, the half of Egypt blocked off, right? When they were showing all the maps and all these ships going in, and they found all those people in those containers. Where were they going? What's the way to Israel, guys? The Suez Canal. It has to be Christian blood or baptized blood. So now, when you look at, I know this is really, people are like, what the? Nope, you have to follow it here. So the Catholic brought the Jews, and the Jews were all bloodthirsty, right? Because they had a vendetta, they know how to poison the well, the whole Black Death, because they're like, oh, they blamed us for the Black. Yes, we blamed you. Because, like when we talked with Terry, it's funny that they were injecting salt water into babies in the womb in order to burn them alive. Now, you don't think just some decent people like us would come up with that. No. They would, and they have. They're bloodthirsty. Oh, and we got some stuff about Israel too, and Bibi, ooh, he's fucked. Let's see. Also, when we because we got a couple of videos, and I also find it funny that when President Trump was saying Christmas in July, right? Now, Christmas in July, what does July mirror? July mirrors January. What Christmas is in January? Orthodox. But remember, sometimes you have to go forward to go back. When's the Christmas that they instilled? The 25th of December. So you have to stay in the same month. So when you go forward to the 25th of July, which is the day out of time, it starts to make a lot more sense. Because also when you go forward, you go back, right? You have to do it twice. So you take the dates, right? If you go from 7/7 to 7/25, right? Sometimes you have to go forward. So you go to 7/8, right? Sometimes you have to go back. You take it back to the 24th. From the 8th to the 24th, total days, 17 days. Here's that number again, because there is also something we discussed last night about the letter Q, and kind of a little off here, because in post 1,000 there's an H, right? What number corresponds with H? The 8, correct? Oh shit. Right. So letter Q. Fuck. What happened to it? Hold on a second. Second. Here we go. The letter Q. How many times we got to do things? Look under number 2. That's number 8, isn't it? So let's go to the letter Q is of uncertain origin. But number 2, both of these early signs have been compared to by some scholars to the Q sign that was developed about 1000 BCE in Byblos and other Phoenician and Canaanite centers. Huh. Phoenician and Canaanites. That's a P equals C. Remember, these filthy wannabe Jews are all Canaanites. Remember, Cain, they're like, oh, Cain slew Abel. No, whoa. Because when we go back to their dates, to their calendar, and as Adam and Eve mentions nothing of Cain and Abel, it goes right to Seth. So when they say, oh, Cain slew Abel, no. Where do you think they got cannibal from? Cain ate Abel. They're filth. I mean, I don't know what else really to say about that. It's just, it's the point where all this was based off of resets. Every bit of it. Now, when it comes to the Epstein video that they released, what if they did all this as a calm to us, for us to wake the fuck up and see what the hell's going on? Because every dog has its day, right? When are the dog days of summer? Glad you asked. July 3rd to August 11th. 11/3. Also, remember, in 2020, July 3rd, where was Trump? Mount Rushmore, where he'll be permanently put up there. They need to take Teddy Roosevelt off. Because when President Trump was speaking in, what was it, a couple days ago? He mentioned about Teddy Roosevelt. He didn't really like Teddy Roosevelt for some reason. I wonder why. Because Teddy Roosevelt was McKinley's VP. Now, replace McKinley with JFK. Because for some reason, once Teddy Roosevelt got in, everything started going downhill. And then what happened? 20-something odd years later? His cousin gets in. The governor from New York, FDR. And oh boy, what didn't he screw up? So when people are saying that, like FDR, like when Trump said that Biden was worse than, Biden was worse than the 10 worst presidents. I'm like, I don't even know if that's possible at this point. Because if we just look at FDR, period, and his whore wife, Eleanor, because remember, Eleanor was big in the UN to push for that state of Israel. They're all beholden to das Juden. That's why we have to get rid of all of them. I'm not saying to kill them at all. Send them someplace far the fuck away from us. Because their religion is based strictly off Satanism. This Judeo-Christian bullshit they try to feed us. Exactly, sportsmen. They were more than kissing cousins. But remember, Eleanor was a 2. Because Hillary and Huma were having seances and talking to Eleanor Roosevelt. Wonder how you could do that. But, so we're just gonna jump around a little bit because 10 and 10, right? Right? What if we found the 10? I got one video coming up. So this whole God promised us this land, right? Well, that could be true. There's just a problem with it. There was a big caveat to that. Stop doing your blood sacrifices and go to Christ. That's it. And going to Christ means that you actually have a conscience. Clearly, none of these savages have a conscience. They have no compassion, no conscience, victimhood, their little Jewish supremacy shit, because they feel that we, not us, because we were going to be offed. They were going to use the blacks as the slaves. They're more easily manipulated. Don't take it from me. You could literally just notice it plain as day. Because you give people little money, it will corrupt anyone. Don't be corruptible. So this video is 12 minutes long, and it's before Israel. 10 places proposed for the Jewish state. But I thought that was their land. Nope.
Today we have an interesting video about the Jewish history and the settlement adventure of the Jewish people before the Second World War process.
Before the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, the question of where to create a homeland for the Jewish people sparked numerous proposals, debates, and diplomatic experiments. Many Zionists primarily focused on the historical land of Palestine. But the road to statehood was long, difficult, and filled with alternatives. In times of rising anti-Semitism, persecution, and forced migration, Jewish leaders, colonial powers, and international organizations considered various regions around the world as potential Jewish homelands. This video explores the most significant proposals made for a Jewish homeland before Israel was established. One of the most well-known alternatives to Palestine was the so-called Uganda Plan. In 1903, following a series of pogroms in the Russian Empire that caused horrific suffering among Jews, the British government proposed granting a piece of land in East Africa, today part of Kenya, as a territory for Jewish settlement. British colonial officials.
I just want to stop right here because already I feel that this story is all bullshit. Because of everything bad that was happening to the Jews then. No. I don't know. If they were leaving Russia at that time, right? What do you say, 1903? Who was running Russia? Tsar Nicholas II. So, when you look at this whole thing, why did the Bolshevik Revolution happen? Because Tsar Nicholas II wanted to do the same thing that Hitler did. Get these shitbags out of my country. They're poisoning the well. And all they did was they kept on going to different countries because all these countries, they didn't want them. They hated them. Clearly. But now you see why.
Called it the Uganda Scheme, although the area in question was not actually in Uganda proper. Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern political Zionism, brought the proposal to the 6th Zionist Congress in Basel. His suggestion shocked many delegates. For some, the plan represented a practical way to rescue Jews under immediate threat. For others, it was a betrayal of the central Zionist vision, returning to the ancestral homeland in Palestine. After intense debate, a delegation was sent to investigate the territory, but the 7th Zionist Congress in 1905 officially rejected the Uganda Plan. Despite being short-lived, this proposal triggered a major ideological split among early Zionists. In the late 19th century, a Jewish philanthropic experiment began in Argentina, largely due to the efforts of Baron Maurice de Hirsch, a wealthy Jewish financier. He established the Jewish Colonization Association to help Russian and Eastern European Jews escape persecution by settling them on agricultural lands in South America. Several colonies were established, especially in the province of Entre Rios, and thousands of Jews migrated to these settlements. The goal was not to build a Jewish state per se, but to provide a safe haven and promote economic independence for Jews. These Argentine colonies became known as Jewish gauchos, and although the project had mixed results, it laid the groundwork for the idea that Jews could establish autonomous communities in distant lands outside of Europe. In 1928, the Soviet Union launched its own version of a Jewish homeland in the far eastern region of Siberia, near the Chinese border. The area, known as Birobidzhan, was declared the Jewish Autonomous Oblast in 1934. The idea was to offer Soviet Jews a region where they could live, work the land, and develop a secular Yiddish-speaking socialist culture within the USSR. In 1924, the Politburo decided to create a region in Russia for Jews. An initial plan, which had gained considerable support both in Russia and the West, was to establish this region in Crimea, but the settlement was changed to Birobidzhan because Crimea was already well populated. Birobidzhan was a harsh and remote area, with extreme winters and limited infrastructure. The Soviet government encouraged Jewish migration to the region and even launched propaganda campaigns promoting it as a Soviet Zion. Some Jewish families did relocate, but the experiment struggled. Stalin's purges and growing anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union further undermined the project. Today, Birobidzhan still exists as a political entity, but its Jewish population is tiny, and the dream of a vibrant Jewish cultural center there has long faded. One of the most interesting proposals for Jewish relocation was the infamous Madagascar Plan, promoted by various European powers at different times, most notably by Nazi Germany in the 1930s. The idea was to forcibly relocate European Jews to the island of Madagascar, off the coast of East Africa, which was then a French colony. The plan was originally floated by some Polish officials in the 1920s who were eager to reduce their Jewish population, but it gained more traction under Hitler's regime. Nazi leaders viewed the Madagascar Plan as a final solution to the so-called Jewish problem before the Holocaust took the form of industrial extermination. The plan was never implemented, largely due to wartime logistics and naval blockades. The Madagascar Plan remains a dark reminder of how the idea of Jewish relocation was weaponized by anti-Semitic regimes. In the early 1900s, British officials discussed the possibility of establishing a Jewish settlement in El Arish, a town in the Sinai Peninsula. British Zionist agents explored the land and held discussions with Egyptian authorities. The idea was to offer a closer alternative to Palestine, but it faced opposition from both local Egyptian leaders and Jewish settlers, who found the region agriculturally unviable. The El Arish proposal never progressed beyond the exploratory stage, but it reflects how multiple locations in or near the Middle East were considered. In the early 1940s, the US government considered a proposal to resettle Jewish refugees in Alaska. The idea was put forward by Secretary of the Interior Harold Ickes, and it became known as the Slattery Report, named after Undersecretary Harry Slattery. The proposal aimed to save European Jews from Nazi persecution by encouraging immigration to Alaska, which at the time was a sparsely populated US territory. However, the plan was not about state building. It was framed as a humanitarian emergency measure. Despite being supported by some officials, it faced significant public opposition and ultimately failed to gain congressional approval. In the 1930s and 1940s, as Nazi aggression escalated, some proposals emerged to create Jewish settlements in South America and the Caribbean. The Dutch government briefly considered relocating Jews to Suriname, while the British explored options in British Guiana, which is modern-day Guyana. These proposals were driven largely by desperation during the refugee crisis, and neither became formal government policies. They never offered statehood or autonomy, only temporary refuge. Still, they are worth noting as part of the wider global scramble to find safe havens for Jews when few countries were willing to accept them. After World War II, as Holocaust survivors sought to reach Palestine, Cyprus became a holding site. The British, who then controlled both Cyprus and Palestine under separate mandates, used Cyprus to detain tens of thousands of Jewish refugees attempting to immigrate to Palestine illegally. While Cyprus was never proposed as a permanent Jewish homeland, its role as a refugee center during the 1940s makes it part of the historical geography of Jewish displacement and temporary settlement. The conditions in the British-run camps were poor, and international pressure eventually led to their closure as Israel's independence approached. During the 1930s, Japan explored a curious and little-known idea known as the Fugu Plan, named after the dangerous Japanese delicacy, pufferfish, which is safe only if prepared carefully. Japanese officials, influenced by some white Russian émigrés and anti-Semitic European literature, believed that Jews had global financial power and could be useful to Japan's imperial ambitions. Their plan was to settle Jewish refugees fleeing Europe in the Japanese-occupied region of Manchuria and possibly Shanghai. The Japanese hoped this would attract international Jewish capital and influence to Japan's side. Although several hundred Jews were allowed to settle in Shanghai, and diplomats like Chiune Sugihara in Lithuania issued transit visas that saved thousands of lives, the grand idea of a Japanese-backed Jewish autonomous zone never materialized. Still, the Fugu Plan remains one of the most bizarre and ironic examples of a cynical attempt to leverage Jewish suffering for geopolitical gain. Among the lesser-known but serious proposals for Jewish resettlement was the Kimberley Plan in Australia. In the late 1930s, as Nazi persecution escalated in Europe, a Jewish organization called the Freeland League for Jewish Territorial Colonization, led by Russian Jewish activist Isaac Nachman Steinberg, proposed establishing a large-scale Jewish settlement in the Kimberley region of northern Western Australia. This vast and underpopulated area was seen as a place where tens of thousands of Jews, up to 75,000, could find refuge and build a self-sustaining agricultural community. The goal was not to create a sovereign state, but rather an autonomous, Jewish-run zone within the bounds of the Australian government. The plan gained some support from local officials and developers who saw potential economic benefits. However, the Australian federal government rejected the proposal in 1944, citing concerns about national unity, assimilation, and the potential backlash of concentrated ethnic migration. While the Kimberley Plan was never realized, it stands as a fascinating chapter in the global search for Jewish refuge, showing that even the most remote corners of the world were considered in the desperate quest for safety during the darkest years of Jewish history. Beyond Alaska, which we already discussed under the Slattery Report, there were other suggestions about settling Jews in underpopulated or rural parts of the United States. Some ideas floated during the 1930s and early 1940s included areas like North Dakota and South Dakota, Texas and Arizona, Louisiana's bayous, New York, and parts of New Jersey. These suggestions often came from private citizens, Jewish organizations, or local officials sympathetic to the Jewish plight. However, the U.S. federal government remained largely restrictive on immigration during this period. Public anti-Semitism, economic concerns during the Great Depression, and strict immigration quotas made large-scale resettlement nearly impossible. Proposals were never adopted at the national level, and tragically, many Jewish refugees were turned away during the Holocaust. Despite all these alternatives, Zionist leaders and the broader Jewish population maintained a strong emotional, religious, and historical attachment to Palestine. For most Zionists, settling in Uganda, Birobidjan, or Madagascar was unthinkable. Their goal was not just to find any land, but to return to their land. The rejection of the Uganda Plan in 1905 reaffirmed that commitment. The Holocaust further strengthened the push for a Jewish state in Palestine. After the war, global sympathy for Jewish survivors grew, and pressure mounted on Britain and the United Nations to resolve the question of Jewish statehood. In 1947, the UN voted to partition Palestine into Jewish and Arab states, leading to the creation of Israel in May 1948. The journey to Israel's founding was not straightforward. It was shaped by persecution, exile, ideology, and international politics. From the frozen lands of Siberia to the jungles of Madagascar, various corners of the world were proposed as places where Jews could settle, survive, or thrive. But in the end, only one location united Jewish history, faith, and political will: Palestine. The story of these alternative proposals offers a powerful reminder of how fragile and uncertain the path to nationhood can be, and how history could have turned out very differently.
I know, imagine my shock, right? So it's funny that it's all about assimilation, right? They don't come here to assimilate. They don't come here to absorb into our culture because they feel that, oh, well, we can worship anybody we want. And what do they use? Oh, they use the Bible, but then you have the Torah, the Talmud, and all this. Makes zero sense. Funny thing is that I don't see too many people, I don't see too many Japanese people screaming reparations. Do you? And they have a right to. Because remember when they were mentioning to settle some of them in, rural parts of the United States, California. So how did they pull that off? Well, it's easy. You've got Churchill and FDR, right? What they did was, remember, it's December. It's cold. So what they do, they cut off all oil imports to Japan during the wintertime. Now, that would piss a lot of people off, right? I mean, it would piss me off. So what did they do? What did Japan do, right? I mean, they knew when they were going to hit Pearl Harbor. Because the week before December 7th, that whole week, they're running anti-aircraft training, firing shells, right? Blew through a shit ton of shells that whole week. And they're like, all right, guys, sweet. We're going to give you guys a bunch of leave. You guys go to Honolulu, do whatever you want or anything. They locked up all the anti-aircraft shells. That's why they couldn't shoot any of these planes out of the sky, because they had these 5-inch guns off the destroyers and the battleships. That's not feasible at all. So they bombed us. They was like, oh, we got to get in this war too. Well, I mean, of course, because I mean, the Lend-Lease Act, where FDR was just giving the communists the weaponry to do this, we were on the wrong side of everything because of them. So when they scream, oh, 5 soldiers, yeah, fuck you. How many Americans have died because of Israel? I'll wait for that number. Because it's funny that 6 million, 6 million. Why would you tattoo people when you're going to kill them anyway? It's funny because, I mean, they all get together. They all show off their tattoos. They're all smiling. I'm like, it makes you think. If something was that dark in your history, right, and that happened to you, wouldn't you do everything within your power to get rid of that number? Why didn't they? Because they had to have it for a narrative. And plus, those numbers were probably account numbers because they were all getting paid. Simple as that. So when they say, oh, you know, my family was in the Holocaust. So how is it the world population in 1939 of Jews was like 15.3 million, right? But then you had the Holocaust. You have to deduce 6 million. So now you're sitting at 9 million. So why in 1946 was the Jewish population 15.7 million people? So nobody died. They put them in these camps because they're shitbags. You can't trust them. They want to destroy everything that we had. Because you think that blacks weren't in there or anything? They all were there. Why don't they say anything about the blacks getting tortured in Holocaust in the camps? No, nothing like that. No. But you got to admit, the Fuji plan by Japan and what it's named after, the pufferfish, because it's poison. You poison the well. That's exactly what they do. Just, man. And when mentioned, few countries willing to accept Jews. I wonder why. You know, if you were fine, upstanding citizens, wouldn't people be like, hey, you know what? It's like living in your neighborhood, right? Hey, family moved next door. They're really nice, you know? Or, hey, we got this family that moved next door, and they're out there beating chickens that are alive against their house or a dumpster. And they say because that's their religion. Let's see what's that Biro Bidazan, right? Because here's where it all ties in. They want a socialist culture for Jews. When people say that, oh, Stalin hated the Jews, get fucked. They're all Jews. All of them. He didn't hate them. No. They were useful idiots. They're bloodthirsty. Because what land did they want originally? Crimea. Now, we go to our current situation with Ukraine. Because how did Ukraine become Ukraine? All you have to do is look from 1917 to 1923, that 6 years, it's always sixes, that they were raising hell all around the world. But, you can't blame us because, that book says that we're God's chosen people. So we can do whatever we want. And they have. And when you said Stalin was anti-Semitic, get the fuck out of here, man. It's so stupid. Just like they're anti-fascist, right? No. Maybe we have the whole ANTI completely wrong. Because you have Antifa, anti-fascist. Well, they're fascist. It's all anti-communism, devout communism. Because how many versions of communism are there? There's a lot. Unfortunately, there's a lot. And let's see what else. That one do. And remember, they all wanted. Oh, we need fertile land to farm. Yeah, okay. Because a while ago, we watched a video that they're interviewing the filth within their within Palestine. And if they were so worried about agriculture, why are they bringing Thai nationals from Thailand all the way over to Israel to be their slaves? Because I remember what this bitch said plain as day. They asked her, well, why don't you do it? She said, that's beneath us. Oh. Sorry, we didn't know. And the Madagascar plan, because they talk about industrial extermination. There was no industrial extermination. They were all work camps. They had a library. They had a pool. They had brothels. But if everybody knew that, then that would completely destroy their narrative, now wouldn't it? Unfortunately, it would. So much just you the sad thing is you try to see it their way, but with a bad back, I can't shove my head so far up my ass to see that. I mean, we have got some good ones. Because there's when it comes to this Epstein video, because Jesus Enrique Rosas, the body language guy, right? I'm going to tell you right now, from what he found, he is the most brilliant one out of all of us. Because he did a 35-minute video, and he went through the whole thing, because everybody's so worried about, well, there's that minute missing. Guys, get off the fucking minute. The minute has nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. Who forged that video? Because all the documents we have, remember, we have all the handwritten, they said, oh, well, they don't have any of the times. We have them. We got them upscribed. We went over them. It's like, no, no, we're not accepting this at all. Because remember, they were like, oh, when they were wheeling them out, and they took a picture. It's like, oh yeah, it's Epstein. It's like, that's Anthony Bourdain, assholes. You tell by the nose. Bourdain had like, you know, that Jew knows. Because Bourdain, he was killing kids too. You have to watch these chefs. Because all these chefs, what are they cooking, guys? Just stupid. Oh, but I do have one video that is from Karen Boroshenko. You know, the chick that's out and all the socialist stuff. Oh my God, when I saw this, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You guys get your fucking kids out of public schools. What do we say about the teachers' unions? What do we say about all the unions? They're all communist. That's it. The service union, all of them. You don't need a union if you're putting, sheets on a bed or vacuum a hotel. What do you need a union for? Just do your damn job. That's it. If you can't do your job, then we'll find somebody else. Oh, but they have to protect their assets. This one's short, sweet, to the point. It's 3 minutes, 47 seconds long. But I advise you all, because this was at the Socialism 2025 conference in Chicago. I know, imagine that. Because all this is relevant, because it all goes back to ex parte queering. They're all enemy combatants. Every single one of them.
I'm Tina. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin.
Another
Lifetime
one,
member of the Teaching
Madison.
Assistants Association, which is an AFT. I'm also a lead
AFT.
steward in the Madison Teachers Incorporated, because I left higher education and work in a high school now. So everyone who raised your hand and said that you got radicalized in college, imagine if you got radicalized 4 years earlier.
Yo!
There's a dialectic between these organizations, but there are some major differences. High schools are a cross-section of our community. So when we look around higher ed and we're like, why is everyone so white and rich here? Look at the public schools. Now, people do a lot of research on like, what's going wrong in public schools? Why are children struggling to read? Why are there these dropout rates? And they all say, well, not all, but a lot of people point to teacher preparation programs.
Yes.
Which is in part a backhanded way to challenge teachers' unions, right? And I do want to say, there is no organization that does more to improve the conditions of the lives of children than teachers' unions.
Bullshit.
And I have 3 minutes. So we need to train high schoolers how to organize. High school teachers, our hands are really tied. They're banning books, they're cutting funding, and we all, like, if you have children in school and they're in a club, that teacher is not paid for that time, whoever is advising them. They're going in on their lunches. Y'all know, it's a lot. Okay, we help children. The next thing. Basically, I used to, when I was a graduate student organizer, I was always saying we need to organize undergraduates to join in this struggle because we're students and workers. And now I just want to say, because I think a lot of people here are in higher ed, like, work with the high schools, connect with the teachers unions, connect with your kids' teachers, give them, I'm gonna be honest, give us money. Like on Teacher Appreciation Day, send a gift card to your high school teachers. Elementary school teachers get it, high school don't.
Honey.
Or like, whatever, just offer material support whenever you can. Show up at their protests, like send an email and say that you support them, because school boards listen to families. Follow your school board of the local public schools, follow them on social media, go to those meetings if you can, but like small policy changes will transform your city. That's how we get people into higher education, is through having strong public schools. Now, I want to say, if you're on campus and you're organizing, you have a school of education, probably, right? There's a place where people learn how to become teachers. Why are K-12 teachers overwhelmingly white and from like well-to-do families or rural areas? Higher education is a really hostile space for students of color. I'm not going to explain that, but
Thank you much. Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not stopping you. I'm just letting you know we're at 3 minutes, but it's fine. Continue.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. University of Wisconsin-Madison is one of the top schools of education in the country. It used to be 300 students applied every year for the School of Ed, 200 were rejected. Now we accept everyone, they go into classrooms, it's not for them. That means there's 200 people every year in my city who want to do good and are willing to do extra work for no money and spend an entire year unpaid in student teaching, and they're just kind of lost, right? So go to the School of Ed, offer to do guest lectures in teachers' classes to teach about unions, because we need better political education in higher education for K-12 teachers.
Yo!
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome.
I'm gonna do it right now.
By the way, when she mentioned AFT, that's the American Federation of Teachers. They're all communists, guys. And I did see infiltration, not invasion. No. It says infiltration over invasion. You have them both. The infiltration's already happened. Now the invasion. Everybody's Project Bluebeam, aliens are going to go. Explain the border. That's all. There's your alien invasion. You're not going to see a bunch of googly-eyed fucks running around. No. It's them. Man, I'll tell you what. Just... And the bitch in the back. Notice how they always have that fist. Who copywrote it, right? Remember? The JDL. The Jewish Defense League. The Hanism. Guys, this is... Got to get rid of them. They poisoned our well. They poisoned our children. It's all they do. We got to get rid of them. And the sad thing is, if you say that, oh, genocide. Whoa. We don't want you here. We don't want any of these pricks here. None of them. None. So, I am going to go through this is a quickie. When you see how this fits, because Linda Yaccarino, I hate this bitch. I hate her when she was at SpaceX. She was a big deep state. Right? Now, funny thing is, right? Because when you go through, and we've gone through countless Wikipedia files, right? They always say who their parents are and where they're from and what their background is, but not her. Chairman of Global Advertising Partnership for NBC Universal. She was for X Corp. She was also with SpaceX. But she worked at Turner Entertainment for 15 years. Ted Turner, right? Yeah. But the big one is right here. Where'd you grow up? Deer Park, New York. Watch the water, right? What bottled water brand do they give to people testifying in Congress? They give them Deer Park water. Deer Park, New York. Oh, yes. Hamlet and census designated place in the town of Babylon. New York's the second Babylon, guys. Because also, when we go to the town of Babylon, right? All this history, right? Remember Amityville Horror? It's in Babylon. They just list all the beaches, everything like that, all this, right? geography, demographics. They always say 76.34% white, because who calls themselves white when they don't want to be white? The Jews, right? Studios at 555 Sunrise Highway. You don't say. But they talk about the railroad lines, the bus service, major roads, cares, notable people. A lot of people came from Babylon, guys. But we have got to go back to Deer Park. Because, scroll down a little bit more. It's known as the fruit basket of New York State. But right here, Deer Park was the locale of the Edgewood State Hospital. Originally a TB sanatorium and later an army hospital during World War II. I wouldn't even say it was an army hospital. Because it's a psychiatric complex, formerly stood in Deer Park, New York. It was one of 4 state mental asylums built on Long Island. Kings Park State Hospital, Central Islip State Hospital, and Pilgrim State Hospital, which is still open. Hospital was built in the early 1940s, believed to be a work progress administration-funded project that was under FDR. All under FDR. But the War Department completed its construction for use as a psychiatric facility for battle-traumatized soldiers. They had PTSD, shell shock, what they had. Its entire campus, in addition to 3 buildings from nearby Pilgrim State Hospital and numerous temporary structures, was used as Mason General Hospital. I mean, shit. You can't even make this up. But when the war ended, the hospital was transferred back to New York State, where it essentially operated as a tubular division of Pilgrim for a few years. 1946 film director John Huston was assigned by the U.S. government to film a documentary about recovering soldiers in the hospital for propaganda purposes titled Let There Be Light. Was there ever any light? Advancements in medicine throughout the 50s and 60s offer alternatives to institutionalization led to deinstitutionalization. The hospital was closed by who? Governor Nelson Rockefeller. So already in New York, you had FDR as a governor, you had Nelson Rockefeller as a governor, and remember, Nelson Rockefeller became Gerald Ford's VP after, and I know you're not going to believe this, after Spiro Agnew got busted by the IRS. You can't make that up. But let's check. Kings Park State Hospital, the Kings Park Psychiatric Center, the Psych Center, right? Opened from 1885 to 1996. There's a problem here. Number one, you didn't build that in 1885, did you? Nope. But when we go back to talking about these mental asylums, post-reset, Kings Park Psychiatric Center was established in 1885 by Kings County in nearby Suffolk County, adjoining the Society of St. Johnland, established by William Augustus Muhlenberg. Prior to consolidation of Kings County with Queens, Manhattan, Staten Island, and the Bronx to form modern New York City. Official name of the hospital in its first 10 years was the Kings County Asylum. Make asylums great again. Taken from the name of the county that Brooklyn occupied. The hospital was revolutionary at the time in its sense that it was a departure from the asylums of folklore, which were overcrowded places where gross human rights abuses often occurred. No. When you see how these hospitals, no. The asylum built by Brooklyn to alleviate overcrowding in its own asylums. So we're supposed to just accept this, that this hospital is just built by Brooklyn. Just Brooklyn came together like, hey, let's just slap up a mental hospital, right? So you get everybody out there because the population was so high back then. Hey, let's just build this massive building. Nope. To alleviate overcrowding its own asylums was a farm colony. Asylum, the farm. There's always two. You got the CIA farm and you got the mental asylum farms, where patients worked in a variety of farm-related activities such as feeding livestock and growing food, and as this was considered to be a form of therapy. What did we just learn about Das Juden? Oh, they wanted agriculture, right? See how it all just... Eventually, Kings County Asylum began to suffer from the very thing that attempted to relieve, overcrowding. New York State responded to the problem in 1895 when control of the asylum passed into state hands and was renamed the Kings Park State Hospital. Surrounding community, which would be known as Indian Head, adopted the name Kings Park, by which is still known today. Indian Head, huh? Geronimo? Skull? State eventually built the hospital in a self-sufficient community that not only grew its own food, but also generated its own heat and electricity. How? Captain Ether. Had its own Long Island Railroad spur and housed its staff off-site. You know, had your own railroad spur, right? All old world. As patient populations grew throughout the early part of the 20th century, the hospital continued to expand. By the late 1930s, the state began to build upward instead of outward. During this period, the famous 13-story, Building 93 was constructed. Designed by state architect William E. Hoggard and funded with Works Progress Administration money. Right? The building, often dubbed the most famous asylum building on Long Island, was completed in 1939. So, this is all post-Depression. Remember, the world's going to war, everything like that. Funny that the Depression never stopped any building here, huh? Used as an infirmary for facilities, geriatric patients, as well as patients with chronic physical ailments. Really. Here we go. After World War II, patient populations at Kings Park and other Long Island asylums increased markedly. In 1954, the patient census at Kings Park topped 9,303, but would begin a steady decline afterward. By the time Kings Park reached its peak patient population, the old rest and relaxation philosophy surrounding farming had been succeeded by a more invasive techniques of free frontal lobotomies and electroshock therapy. Why and how? Like I said, everybody wants to blame the Nazis. When who else did we bring over? Unit 731 from Japan. They were the ones doing this shit. So what they did was, is the guy that led 731, I can't forget his name off. I forgot his name offhand. But when he was caught, the U.S. government decided that, well, instead of killing him and executing him, it's better that, hey, if you come on our side, all sins are forgiven. However, those methods were soon abandoned after 1955 following the introduction of Thorazine, the first widely used drug in the treatment of mental illness. Because why were people going mental? It's just like, oh, you're depressed? Oh, you commit suicide. Having a bad day? Oh, you commit suicide. Look up in Canada. Made. And New York's trying to push it too. As medication made it possible for patients to live normal lives outside of a mental institution, the need for large facilities such as Kings Park diminished, and the patient population began to decrease. In addition, activists worked in legal suits throughout the 70s to reduce the patient population in major institutions, arguing that people could better be supported in smaller community centers. Empty the asylums. The jails, the asylums, they did it here. Let a bunch of psychopaths out there and just let them go at it. By early 1990s, the Kings Park Psychiatric Center, as it became known, was much reduced. Many of the buildings were shut down or reduced in usage. This included the massive Building 93. By the early 1990s, only the first few floors of the building were in use. While many patients were deinstitutionalized and large facilities were closed, there was a shortage of small community centers, which were never developed in the number needed. You know what the funny thing is? Couldn't you correlate the hospitals, right, with everything we went through? Well, there's still a lot more to go through, but under Data Republican, we start looking through there, the Jews were all about opening trauma centers. Because all trauma, right? Because they believe in generational trauma. Oh, my family was in Hogs. It's funny, Shapiro say, JFK, it's back in 63. Why don't you let the other shit go then, bud? You won't. Just like the Jews came in and they pointed us, hey, the whites are the ones that had the slaves. We didn't go over there and take any slaves. They were brought here by the Dutch and the Jews. So now when you look at that general order on number 11 that Grant put in, that wanted to throw all these Jews out of all these states, then you had Abraham Lincoln. We can't do that because he was probably fucking blackmailed too. Because Abraham Lincoln was black. Duh. This resulted in many more mentally ill people being caught up and retained in jails and prisons because of difficulties in dealing with the world. Many of the homeless in urban areas are mentally ill. People with chronic illnesses who have difficulty keeping up with medication regimes or resist them. Response to declining patient population, the New York State Office of Mental Health developed plans to close Kings Park as well as another Long Island asylum, the Central Islip Psychiatric Center, in the early 1990s. Who was the president in the early 1990s? Bush Sr. The plans called for Kings Park and Central Islip to close, and remaining patients from both facilities be transferred to the still operational Pilgrim Psychiatric Center or be discharged. So if you couldn't transfer them there, you just let them out on the streets. Whatever happens, happens. In the fall of 1996, the plans were implemented. The few remaining patients from Kings Park and Central Islip were transferred to Pilgrim, and in Kings Park, 111-year run. Talk about the buildings. Building 93. They decided to slap it all together. Red brick, no less. Building 21 and 22. Building 7. I know, right? Building 7, cute. 10-story. Building 41, 43, also known as the Quad. And it made an X shape. Then they had patient buildings. Building 1, Building 15, Building 39, maximum security violent ward. But closed in the 1990s. So what do? They just dumped them all on the street. Now you see why we're having a problem with mental illness in this country. Building 39, Veterans Group Patient Housing, built in 1931. Yeah, to do all the lobotomies. Now you see where Metallica got the video portion of the movie One. People are sick. Building 136, 138, 140, Isolation Ward, 150, 151. Cottage-style halfway houses, built in 87. Still in use and operated by the state. Cute. Nice rundown. They had outbuildings. Building 80, known as Your Call. Yeah. On the Natural Register for Historic Places in 2023. Campus Firehouse. Macy Home, Building 94, 95, 101. How many buildings are there? So when did everybody come together and build all these buildings? They didn't. 1996, several proposals regarding the property have come and gone, and numerous developers have attempted to purchase the grounds from New York State. Development proposals have proven to be highly controversial as the former campus contains numerous obstacles to development. The greatest obstacles are several buildings that were demolished into their basements and buried while the hospital is still operating. Asbestos in these buildings were never properly abated. What do you do to buildings that have a massive issue with asbestos? You have invisible planes fly into them. That's all you do. So when they say, oh, all the people on 9/11 died, it's like, how many people contracted lung cancer afterwards? Because once you make asbestos friable, it will give you cancer. If it's in its solid state and wrapped up like pipe fitters do, they wrap all those insulation on it, they fully wrap it because it's asbestos. But hey, you know what? You made it friable all over New York City. You didn't say shit to anybody because everybody's out there, they got bullshit mascots like, no, asbestos. You have to have like the double canister respirators. Other areas include buried ash containing unknown materials from the hospital's power generation facilities and asbestos in steam tunnels and remaining buildings. How do you know that's the ash from it? These problems create a fear in the surrounding community that developers will have no choice but to build high-density housing to offset the environmental cleanup costs. If the asbestos wasn't abated, that means it's still friable. If it's friable, why in the hell would you put high-density housing in to offset the environmental cleanup costs? So did you really clean it up? And a return to profit and return of profit. It's all about that always. Since the hospital closed its doors in 1996, trespassing has become a large problem at KPPC. As enthusiasts of the paranormal, amateur writers, and photographer hobbyists visit the grounds. Additionally, KPPC has a reputation on Long Island as being haunted. No shit. Maybe you should check the ash in those remaining buildings that contained unknown materials. Probably bones. Vandalism has increasingly dramatic in recent years, with the interior of Building 93 and 7 being the focus of heavy graffiti. What spot in New York City isn't filled with graffiti? They even have an anonymously run website, including video games of the building's vandalized interiors. Since entering the abandoned buildings is illegal, the property is patrolled by the New York State Park Police. January 2006, New York State aborted the sale of the property. Outgoing Parks Commissioner Bernadette Castro, awesome last name, right? Persuaded other state officials to transfer most of the hospital property to her agency. The plan called for 368 acres, which is 17, to be added to some river state park. This also occurred in 2006, and approximately 90% of the campus is now part of the park. Part of the plan also included the demolition of 15 peculiarly dilapidated buildings as well as unused access road. So they're just demolishing it. They're not abating it. They're just demolishing it. If people get cancer, fuck it, right? Demolition work on the 15 condemned buildings, scheduled to begin in May 2012, was pushed back to July. In late 2012, the state government ordered the removal of these buildings. August 13, 2012, the demolition of Building 123 began. Next day, demolition of Cafe 56 began, as it since had been demolished. And by only September, only a few of the other buildings had been removed. The towering smokestack on the site was imploded on March 27, 2013. What do you need a massive smokestack for? What are you burning? Maybe they should check all that ash. Building 23 was the last to be demolished in May 2013. That's the first round. Everything's happening twice. Mid-2016, early 2017, the second round of demolitions occurred at the site. They included smaller structures on the park side. Cottages 131, 133, and 134 were demolished in August 2016. And buildings 135 and 142 were demolished in mid-September along with their respective steam tunnels. Steam tunnels. Now they're saying the tunnels are steam. Cottage 130 and 132 are to remain at the time to be reused, especially with all that asbestos, right? We're continuing to early 2017 with buildings 44 and 89 to be removed in February that year. Isn't it funny, early 2017 when he got in and who was the last president? Cute. Lastly, the water tank on building 7 is set to be removed sometime February 2017 in order to improve the look of the area for local residents who see it as an eyesore. Yeah, because if they knew all the health hazards that go from those buildings, you wouldn't be living in a highly dense, highly populated area. However, the prevalence of exterior graffiti on the rest of Building 7 and majority of existing buildings still continue to remain an eyesore to the surrounding community and a nuisance attraction to trespassers and other illegal activities. Today, the sprawling area that once housed the Kings Park Psychiatric Center stands as testament to a forgotten era. The former rail spur, abandoned in the late 1980s, was converted into a park of a bike trail in 2003. Pilgrim Psychiatric Center, which took the remaining patients from Kings Park, runs 2 group homes on the ground. One of the patients happened to be a Clinton, a major leaguer. They talk about, popular culture, of course, horror movies, real nice. I'll bet you there's nothing to see there, right? So retarded, I swear to God. These people are so stupid. Right. So, I've got this video with Jesus Enrique Rojas. We've got to watch this, and we have to watch the whole thing because everybody's concerned about what's going on up to that 11:59, 12 o'clock. But he watched the whole thing, and you'll see how this works out.
You're going to see there.
Now this, we've got so much to talk about after this. Because this is going to pique your interest like no other. Because after this, we have another short clip with Caroline Levitt. There's something missing. They're telling us without telling us.
Our camera footage of the Special Housing Unit, or SHU, where Jeffrey Epstein was being held the night that he offed himself. And we already have a lot of questions, and I will answer every single one of them in this analysis. Questions such as, there were people who went in the SHU but never left, or what is exactly the angle that we are looking at in this video? Not to mention that strange hooded figure that concealed their identity, I don't know if a he or a she, and then got out of the SHU.
Who's that?
Strange. Or perhaps one of the most disturbing questions of all. Why is there a full minute missing from the footage that Dan Bongino, Cash Patel, and Pam Bondi said was going to be raw and unedited? Hello, welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my body language analysis and tips. Let's get down to it. First of all, remember that more than 1 month ago, Dan Bongino had already stated that they were going to release the video after some cleanup.
It was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this, we are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. you're going to see there's no one there but him.
Yeah, I don't know why it took so long to clean up a video that is going to show nothing, right? And when I say nothing, I will remind you that Kash Patel has said not once but twice that Epstein indeed killed himself.
But there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there.
There are.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria, you said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
So we're already off to a rough start here. And by the way, didn't they say that the cameras pointed at Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell didn't work? And that is the first question that I will clarify for you right now. To understand the angle of the footage that the Department of Justice and the FBI released, we need to get our bearings about what is the layout of the special housing unit and Epstein's cell block. So the best way to do this is to look at the map, so to speak, of how it's organized, how the SHU is organized, and it's about 6 cell blocks.
Now, learn to read the map. He mentions it. Watch how he breaks this down. This is mind-blowing.
That are organized in pairs, one on top, one on the bottom, as you can see them. You can see one of the cell blocks here, a second one, and the third one, and the other part of the map. This is, you know, for the staircases, the elevators, the part of the, let's say the reception to that special floor, that particular floor of the SHU. And in this cell block, on the one on top, you got Epstein's cell. You see it here on red. And this space in yellow will be like the mini hallway of that cell block, where you can see the cells themselves. I'm going to show you this picture that will be really illustrative of this. Remember the space, the yellow space in here. If you stand in front of the cell block, this is what you're going to see right in front of you. I'm going to make sure that you look at everything so you understand where are we sitting. First of all, the first thing that we were talking about, a broken camera, a camera that didn't work. Well, there's one camera at the end of every cell block. And it turns out that that camera is right here at the end, but that camera didn't work. How convenient, right? But well, that doesn't matter. So we know that the footage released by the DOJ is not the one from that camera, but because that camera did not work. We see a bunch of doors here. It's important to make a distinction between the doors of the jail cells themselves and the utility and crawl space doors. If you see, for example, this door, the 219, you see that there's a window, right, where you can see inside, and the inmate can look outside as well. You got this slot to handcuff people safely, and you also have a slot in case that you have to handcuff them in the feet as well. You know, you also have some of them who only have slots for handcuffing the hands, and you also have these doors which are pretty much nondescript, like they have nothing. They have like this one. Oh, how interesting. These are the utility or crawl space doors. This one, like here, I marked this in white. You see that there are 2 jail cell doors, and there's one utility door in the middle. Why? What are these utility doors for? And this is important. These utility doors are because if you need to fix the plumbing or the electricity, or, this is important, the ventilation of any of the cells, you want to be able to do that without having to open the cell and having to get the inmate out. You can then just go through the utility and crawl space door, and you have access to electricity, plumbing, ventilation system, everything of both of those cells. And you see that there's one utility crawl space door every 2 cells. Very practical. That is part of the design. So now you have a very good idea of what was like Jeffrey Epstein's cell block. One thing is that this is taken straight from the document that the FBI released on the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein killing himself. And by the way, Epstein's cell is a 2020 and it's off screen. It was maybe cropped in purpose, but that's why you see here 219. There would be another utility door and then Epstein's cell block. But this is enough to understand where are we sitting. Now you can see this. This is Epstein's cell, though here's where we were standing. And this is from the floor. This is like the ground floor where, you know, the guards, the officers could see the entrance to every single group or couple of cell blocks. And right from there, you can see that if you are in that ground floor, you are looking at Jeffrey Epstein's cell block, which was on top and was the L tier. Right there, you see that was Jeffrey Epstein's cell block. It's a bit hard to spot, but this is also important. There's a gate here. You see that there's this bars, this gate that is open right now. There's a gate to access the cell block after the staircase. The staircase that goes up and one that goes down. The exact same thing, but Jeffrey Epstein was on top. So far, so good, right? We move on, and this is the view from the officer's desk, the officer's station. Here's where they sat down and maybe take it easy. You can rest. There's a mini fan in there and maybe a telephone. All right. And from that, I'm going to go here. This is the officer's desk. You see that, oh, what a coincidence that they had Epstein's cell right in front of them. I mean, I think there was the only cell that they had right in front of them sitting here. This is the officer's station. You just had to, it's like, raise your gaze, and you had right there, jail cell 2020, Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Again, we move on, and this is the other angle. This could be from Jeffrey Epstein's cell looking down into the officer's station. You see, now you can see very clearly the gate that had access, that granted access to the cell block. I really want you to understand where are we sitting here, because when you see this video, when the first moment I saw this video, I had already started all this many months ago when I began studying the Jeffrey Epstein case. So when I saw the footage released from the DOJ, I was lost. I mean, what is this? This doesn't look like a cell block. This doesn't look like the real thing. Where are we? And what is this 46 in here? I don't get it. So there's one way, very easy way to understand, and I mark it for you. You remember the location of Epstein's cell. You remember the location of the officer's station. Well, the angle of the camera that we're about to analyze comes from the exact opposite corner of the shoe. There's the officer's station. The opposite corner is right here. And here's the camera of the video that we're going to analyze. So much, you know, that's how important it is to understand where are we standing. That is very important. And that's how you see these tiny things. Maybe you don't know how to read maps, but these tiny things that looks like shark fins are doors that open and the way that they open. And this one that I'm marking here is going to be easier if you look at this. See this way, okay, is the door marked 46, and that is the only way of getting in and out the shoe floor. That is going to be really important from now on. So try to remember that. Door 46 is the only way of going in and out. So we are there. There's the camera. So when we take a look at it again, and here, all right, we see the angle. What is the angle? This angle I have marked in yellow. You see that there's like two 45-degree angles or something like that. And door 46 is in the middle. And now you see the footage. Oh, now we understand where are we. There's door 46. There's the angle. And what is right here at the far end? You guess it right. If you guess it, well, congratulations. This is the officer's station. If you can make that out. That is important. Again, I I thought that it was really, really critical to understand the angle so we can understand everything that happens from now on. And before we move forward, let me see. All right. It's important to understand. This is critical that, okay, can we actually see Epstein's cell block from here? And if you see the officer station, okay, this looks like a mess of desks and computers. That is the officer station. I think there's a person standing here in this screenshot. You see that there is some kind of teeth. You see this teeth? Like some vertical teeth in here. Those are the staircases to go up to L tier cell block, Epstein's cell block. And you can see for yourself that from our angle, from the 11-hour footage of this camera angle, you can see only a sliver of those stairs. So you can, maybe you can lean to the other side. You can go up and down without being seen by this camera. Again, that is going to be important later on. If it's too hard to spot, I'm sorry about the zoom in and zoom out. That is the access to Epstein's cell block. That is what's going on in the footage that we are going to analyze. Is that crazy? And just in case, for the record, this is also from the document of the FBI. Jeffrey Epstein's cell is 220, and just in case, this is going to be important for some of you. Oh, all this says that these photographs have been modified for privacy reasons. The only way that the photographs that you have seen, for example, the photographs of the staircases, they say that they have modified them in the document of the FBI. It's only to blur ways to identify officers or turns or anything. But this is the structure. This is the real deal. So that is important. Keep that in mind. So we move to the actual analysis, and I guess the best way to start the analysis is to see the last time Jeffrey Epstein was seen alive. I think it's fair, right? And we know that this is the last time that Jeffrey Epstein was seen alive because the timer marks 7:49 p.m. And according to the document, the full investigation of the FBI, that was the time that Jeffrey Epstein was seen alive one last time. And I'm going to just play this. Maybe we can play this in real time. And you see two officers walking this inmate in orange. You see the only way that we can semi confirm that this is Epstein is that, well, his hair was white. We know that his hair has always been white in all the pictures. We know that the guy was alive, or at least that's what we think. That was Jeffrey Epstein being led to his cell at 7:49 p.m. that night. The only other thing relevant that happened before that was this lady entering through gate 46. Remember that this is the only gate, the only way to go in and out of the shoe is through gate 46. And we're seeing right now an officer using the phone. You see a phone on the wall. That's the way that you communicate with the officers outside that can open this door. This door can only be opened from the outside. All right, she leaves like a trash bin right there. She waits until the door is open in a minute. It's going to be really quickly. Let's speed things up. Just for the record, remember, this is 7:46. You can always see the timer in the lower left corner. This is before Jeffrey Epstein was seen alive the last time. The door is open from the outside, and this female officer goes out with a trash bin through gate 46. So which other event do we have? Where does the wacky stuff begin? We have then 7:56. I'm gonna play this way, maybe in twice the speed. I'm gonna play this as twice the speed because these details are not as important for now. But you see that there are actually people going in and out. And Cash Patel said that there's no way anybody could go in and out, and at least so far so good. It's an officer, right? Should be no big deal, right? And we also have other moments. This moment is going to be important because one inmate at 8:16 p.m. I think that he was collaborating with the cleanup, and he dropped these 2 trash bags, not in the trash bin, but to the side. This is going to be important because someone is going to pick those bags later on, and that someone who's going to pick those bags is important. We move on. We continue. Now we are at 9:07 p.m. and one officer, what is he doing? Oh, he is given some kind of secret paper, or I don't know, schedule, or some kind of folder right below the door. They don't open the door. They just slide maybe an envelope. Maybe it's some kind of random paper. Maybe some kind of document that he needs for the shift. He goes to the door. He doesn't touch the phone because he's not going to request you open the door. Gets the folder, and okay, no big deal. Now, what happens now at 9:11? Guy that looks like a maintenance, he doesn't look like an officer, grabs the phone, asks for permission to get out. I guess that there's a camera. I guess that there has to be at least one camera working to see who requests to go out, right? You have to see, if you're going to open the door from outside, who is requesting for this to open. So maybe they are looking through this camera that we are looking at right now. It makes sense, right? You have a clear view of whoever is asking for permission to get out. So he has the ability to get out. We can play this at twice the speed, no big deal. And then the same guy enters again at what time? He goes out at 9:12, and he goes in again at 9:15. No big deal. We still have some strange stuff. We see I don't know if it's another female officer or if it's the same female officer that we saw a while ago asking for permission to get out or to leave. They open the door in a minute. This is at twice the speed, and she goes away. And then she enters again at 9:32. No big deal. Maybe it was just a bathroom break. I guess that the officers don't have bathrooms inside that bar. Now, this is the thing. This is I think this is the greatest red flag of all this video, of the 11 hours of this video. This is hands down one of the most concerning red flags. This video is not continuous. This video was spliced, was cut. And how do we know? Because there's 1 full minute missing from the footage that we were promised that will be a continuous footage, continuous video, without interruption, without editing. How do we know? Keep an eye here on the timer. It says 11:58:50 p.m., right? And we go 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, and we guess that we're going to see 11:59, right? That minute, so close to midnight. 5 seconds to go. 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, what happened? What happened in there? We're here. I'm going to do that again. 11:58, 55 seconds p.m. You never get to 11:58, 59 seconds and you just jump. I'm going to zoom in case you miss it, because this is proof that this video was tampered with in one way or another. There you are. 11:58:58 jumps to straight to 12 a.m. At some point I thought, okay, maybe it's glitch of the system. Maybe it shaves off 1 minute, but it's strange that it was not just 1 exact minute, it was 1 minute and 2 seconds. So that is strange in itself. And the other thing that's maybe the system, let's play devil's advocate here. Maybe the system splices the video itself when there's a change from one day to the other. That is a possibility. But then why does the frame, and by the frame I say, look at how the size and the orientation of the frame is going to change. I'm going to rewind this again, so you're going to see how it jumps. 5, 4, 3, 8. Now it's smaller. First was bigger, and now it's smaller. And eagle-eyed body language bodies would have noticed that in the upper right corner of this video, something appeared that hasn't appeared in any other point of the video so far. What is this? This absolutely looks like a menu of a video editing app. You see the usual, what looks like, Learn
to read the map. The map is a guide, right? What is a legend? It's right there.
Backwards, this looks like the fast forward will be like the two edges of 2 arrows with it looks like a menu or a menu of some kind. This looks like a pause button, all right? And it is odd, right? Because this should have why is there's a menu of a video editing app or any app going inside this? And you know what is the worst part? The worst part of this, the most concerning part, I'm going to tell you what is the most concerning part. I lost my bearings because there's so much stuff here happening. I'm going to help you see that this was happening from 11:24 p.m. on the marker. I'm going to fast forward back and forth, and you see that at many times the menu of this video editing software was just popping up. 11:55 p.m., 11:24 p.m. was there, 11:45 p.m. was there, and then you know what is crazy? After it changes to the next day to 12 a.m., remember that there's 1 minute missing? The video editing app menu never appears again. That's odd, right? That is a huge red flag. That is a huge red flag. The video has been tampered with. The video is edited, and not only with contrast and lighting. No, we wanted to edit the video. No. It is in every version that minute is missing. And you have already seen that it's quite easy for anybody to go out the shoe where Jeffrey Epstein was being held in 1 minute. You just go up the stairs, press the button on the phone, and you go out, and nobody will know. Nobody would know. How interesting, right? Before we move forward, remember to download my free 100 body language tips right in the description of this video and in the pinned comment. So we move forward. We have more strange things, even more strange things. You haven't seen nothing yet. And we see this case shortly after that video splicing at 12:01, another guard trying to come out, and this one, they held him for a long time. I'm gonna play this as 4x speed because they held him really long. He leaves the door open, he then shuts the door, and then comes back at 12 of, oh no.
Open the door, close door.
This is the guy that I wanted. This is the guy that I wanted to show you that doesn't make sense in any way. This guy, like minutes after this officer leaves, there's this big guy, okay, dressed nothing like an officer. He's got like like a jacket and a cap or something. He goes in. All right, this is gonna be important. He goes in. He grabs the 2 trash bags. You remember the 2 trash bags that the inmate had put in there and not in the trash bin? Or maybe they're not trash bags. Maybe it's their laundry. It looks more like laundry. I'm going to correct myself right now. This looks more like a laundry, dirty laundry. And he shoves the dirty laundry away and gets in to something, another bag of dirty laundry, shoves it outside, maybe tells somebody something, make sure to close the door and enters. Most likely this big guy with this jacket and this cap, maybe he was an officer that is going to get dressed like when he arrived at the shoe. But they don't, do they have lockers or something? Wouldn't that be easier to leave your belongings like in some other space? Remember that they had plenty of space on that area that should be another group of cell blocks, but I don't know. But those are my the thing that I'm thinking. And by the way, why would an officer take care of the dirty laundry? Maybe it's no big deal, right? But why didn't the maintenance guy that left before do that? Questions. I'm just asking questions here. Maybe it's no big deal. Maybe it's not a problem. But now we arrive at 1 a.m. And at 1 a.m. you must have noticed that I included one time, the same timer that we have in the corner. We need the timer up in here because I'm going to play this. I'm going to scrub just past this very fast, because from 1 a.m. and like 1 hour and a half, there was almost no movement. I'm going to play this, okay? There was one officer walking right there. I'm going to keep moving this. I'm going to try to speed things up. It's going to be too slow. I just want to show you how maybe this one was one of those times where the officers doze off or were, you know, taking a quick nap, because you see how the timer is moving, but we see no movement whatsoever. The only movement that we see is from the compression of the video. There's somebody sitting at the officer's desk, at the officer's station, but they're not moving. And even if you were checking your phone or looking at the laptop computer or at the computer, you would be moving in some way. And no, whoever is in there is not moving. Maybe I'm mistaken, but from what I've seen, we're already at 1:23, 24. Gonna go a bit faster. We are almost at 2 a.m. in the morning and no movement whatsoever. Make sure that I don't skip any. No. Maybe we could say, maybe I could say that there's a blob moving in there, but they haven't. They are sitting and they haven't moved much for a good part of an hour. Are 2 officers in there sitting? Maybe it's 2 of them. Again, the quality of the video, there are some part of the, sorry about this, the quality of the video doesn't allow for much detail. But it's not until much later that I could detect that they were actually doing the rounds. And much later, I mean I'm going to jump all the way to 3 a.m. Yeah, all the way to 3 a.m. Again, maybe you can check the footage. By the way, the complete footage, the 11 hours, I'm going to upload them to my Crime Corner True Crime channel. I'm going to leave that link in the description as well. So I didn't see much movement until 3 a.m. Even if they were just sitting and chatting 2 hours without, you know, standing up and walking a bit, I think it's way too much. I think it's, I don't know, it was odd. Now we have a change because at 3:15 a.m., At 3:15 a.m., an officer, I think this is the female officer, the female officer decides to maybe a bathroom break. I'm gonna play this as 4x speed. All right, and notice that she's wearing a jacket. By the way, she's wearing a something that looks like a jacket. It might look like the jacket of the big guy that entered a while ago. And then she enters again 2 minutes later. Bathroom break, no big deal. Again, she goes out again at 3:43 a.m. All right. I play this at 4x speed. And then she goes in again at 3:51. Again, maybe another bathroom break. And now there's this woman that I had never seen, that we can only guess that she has been here all this time, since after the video began, since after Jeffrey Epstein was sent to his cell. This woman who doesn't look like an officer, she asks to get out. Where did she come from? And what was she doing when the other officers were maybe sleeping or sitting on the officer station? I don't know. That is odd. I told you there are going to be strange things in here. And now we are at 4:16 in the morning. 4:16 in the morning, and another moment in which there's going to be a huge chunk of time. I'm going to play this really fast. There's some moments that my software is failing. Maybe it's not 11 hours. I'm tired, boss. 11 hours of footage, please. Have mercy. There can be some movement at 4:23. I think there's some movement. You see here, right? There's a blob that barely moves. Right there. Okay, we can assume that they're moving. I'm gonna zoom out and play this fast, but trying to not that as fast. There's also another flash of a blob in there, but they're not basically not moving. They are right there at the station, and at some point there's no flash, no movement, no nothing. They must be taking a nap. 4:30 in the morning. Let's see how much. Okay, we are close. Remember that Epstein was found at 6:30 something in the morning, so we are just 2 hours away of they realizing that something gone terribly wrong. He offed himself. Again, no movement whatsoever. I think this is going to last until almost 5 a.m. All right, and at 5:27. We have a bit of a movement, but we have a 5:27 a.m. in the morning. This is something that the female officer is going out again. We can play this at, twice the speed. He gestures and she goes in, but there's a figure. There's a strange hooded figure. Who is this? This person, who I assume is a female and is wearing a hoodie, is going out at 5:38 in the morning. And we haven't seen her. I assume that it's a she going in at no point of the night since Jeffrey Epstein was walked to his cell. And you cannot make out her features. I think it's a hoodie that she's wearing.
And they also have gloves on. Notice that?
Or something that is covering, and there's no way of looking at her face or identifying her. Quite strange, right? We never saw her going in. We moved forward. You get my bearings again. There's so much stuff in here. And there's this officer going in. Let's the timing. Let's get the timing right. At 5:38, the strange hooded figure goes out, and almost immediately after, like simultaneously, an officer comes in. That is important. It's simultaneous. There's no editing here. The hooded figure goes out, the officer comes in. And then that same officer, 10 minutes later, goes out with a bag on his left hand. He requests to go out, and there's going to be a long time. He's going to be held there for a long time. I think it's the longest time they're going to hold him in there before opening the door. We are less than 1 hour from Jeffrey Epstein being found dead. Hasn't been. I'm going to play this at 4x. But yeah, he was waiting here for a lot. He grabs the phone again, and then he does something with the trash bin that nobody has touched. He takes a bag from that trash bin, okay? He checks something. He still has the bag that he was carrying now in his right hand, and then he like fixes the bag, and he goes out with the same bag. Well, there was no reason to fix that bag, but he did. And one last thing before Jeffrey Epstein was found dead, this strange hooded figure that I assume is a woman enters again and takes, I think that she takes the hoodie out after she has gone in front of the camera. I don't know if this is a she or if this is a he. I don't know. You tell me. But it is so strange that a hooded figure, you could use a hoodie or have your identity concealed by going in front of the only camera that was working. All right. So I guess that is the thing. And now we arrive at the moment in which Jeffrey Epstein is found dead. This is the last clip for today. How do we know this is the clip? Well, it's 6:34 in the morning, and you see that there's more movement. You see that we have like 3 or 4 people in here. I'm zooming in and play this at twice the speed, maybe 4x the speed. So you can notice that there's more movement. You see there's some kind of distress. They're going back and forth, and they push the chair. They begin making calls. Nobody's going out. Nobody comes in, but they already know that it's obvious that they already know that the guy was dead. So that's what we have so far. Again, I told you so many questions. I tried to answer them all. The thing that I found the most disturbing was the mysterious hooded figure that went out and then in, well, barely less than 1 hour away of Jeffrey Epstein being found dead. We don't know if it's the same person, and the fact that the video was spliced. But again, I would like to know what do you think about this in the comments. Don't forget to download my 100 free bottle language tips right in the description of this video and in the pinned comment. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the bottle language guy. Much love and bliss.
Yeah. Just a big issue with this, right? Now, early on in the video, they had the guy with the orange jumpsuit taking a bag over there, right? This is a maximum security cell block. How would an inmate just walk around without an officer? Or if they're all locked up, why wouldn't the officer just done it himself? What's going on at this Metropolitan Police Station, at this prison? And the camera. You guys, we have a camera for our pets. It costs $20 on Amazon. 20 bucks. And it's high definition. Why wouldn't you have high-def cameras in these places? And now they said, oh, you could see a cell. Where? Also, here's another fun fact that pretty much everybody missed. When we found those documents there's a ledger, right? Because they're supposed to check on the inmates once every 15 minutes. They're supposed to make rounds. Did anybody see anybody walking up and down any stairs the whole time? Me neither. But yet, it's all filled out. The whole thing's filled out. And that software up in the right-hand corner. Because when the FBI came in, they took everything. They took all the computers. They took all the film. They took everything. Which FBI? Because we want to blame the FBI here. You got to blame the one over in Israel. It just really, really stumps you, right? But, yeah, and then, not to mention, if you had an inmate just walking around, you know, putting a bag up here or whatever, and then an officer doesn't get it. Some nobody came and just got it. But the legend appeared at a specific time. At 11:24. If you have the next day, what's the next minute after 11:24? 11:25. Who was born on 11/25? 1961. Junior. Odd. But remember, like you showed before, like Cash Patel, like bring his lips in. It's like, guys, they're telling us. They're literally telling us. Now, just for proof, you guys, this is probably one of the biggest tells of them all.
No one, I mean no one, believes the new FBI DOJ findings that Epstein did not have a client list and that he did not take his own life. And people are even wondering if our own press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, doesn't believe it. Because yesterday during the press conference where she had to answer questions about this topic, she didn't wear her signature cross. When she talks about tariffs, cross. Freeze on federal grants and loans, cross. Economic policies, cross. Allowing new media influencers to be at the press briefings, cross. Border patrol, border security, and border crossings, cross. Doge findings, cross. Now, this is not the first time that she has not worn her statement necklace, but people at home are wondering if she did it on purpose this time because she's trying to let you know that she doesn't agree with this and get her message across.
Or maybe it was a calm to us. At this point, anything and everything is possible. That's why we have to just, you know, because everybody's like, oh, this is bullshit. We know there's a list. We know damn good and well there's a list. Because I have 2 quick videos back to back. Now, this Crazy Days and Nights, right? I don't know if anybody follows it. But it's like one of those entertainment lawyers and all that. But what this guy's doing, he's doing the Lord's work at this point. Pull these up. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put part 1 and part 2 in the drops in the chat, and we'll play them back to back. Because what he's doing is something that you know, maybe we should have done in the first place, but it's not like we didn't have enough going on anyways. Right?
Everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Look. The government's not going to do anything about the Epstein elite. They're just not. So what we're going to do over the next however many parts is to discuss the Epstein elite. Now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, when he was in prison, I was talking about some of these elite over the course of several episodes of the podcast, but I think it's a good idea to be reminded of who these elite are and their connections to everybody else and why the government's not doing anything. Why we're just saying, you know what, we're not going to bring any of these people to justice. So let's start with one. Well, actually, before I start with one, let me tell you this. We're going to go through some of the people in the Black Book, right? But here's the thing about the Black Book. I'm not going to be talking about ones where it's just like name and then perhaps like one phone number or something like that. You know, that's somebody like Epstein maybe just got their business card and put it in there. I'm talking about the people that have 5 or 6 contacts in there. The ones that Epstein like crossed out with a line and put in new phone numbers. Somebody's got like 10 or 12. You know that he was up to his eyeballs with them. But let's talk about Woody Allen first. Might as well. You know, Jeffrey Epstein kept a photo of Woody Allen on his wall and was photographed walking with him on the Upper East Side. They had more than a neighborhood in common, and a lot of people don't know this. We know that Woody Allen is a predator, right? But, for years before his relationship with Mia Farrow, Woody Allen had carried on with a 16-year-old girl he met at Elaine's named Bobby Christina Englehart. Bobby spelled B-A-B-I. And in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, she wondered if she was the inspiration for Manhattan. Now, if you've never seen Manhattan, it's a 1979 movie with Woody Allen about a man in his 40s who dates a high school student. And was nominated for 2 Academy Awards.
That should make you sick to your stomach right there.
Now, Englehart had sex with Allen more than 100 times. Sometimes with Mia Farrow. And she said the whole thing was a game that was being operated solely by Woody, so we never quite knew where we stood. But the crazy thing about this is that Englehart went on to become Epstein's assistant. Yes. Crazy, right? I know. Jeremy Marsh. Okay? This is he leads like this investment banking firm. He's from England, but the investment banking firm's in India, linked to the Paradise Papers, former Players Top 20 Limited with Simon Richard Binns, worked with the British recorded music industry, and also with Edgar Bronfman over at Warner Brothers Music. Edgar Bronfman, of course, you know, his sister's involved in Nexium.
But remember, they're involved with the World Jewish Council, the World Jewish Congress.
Okay. Then we had Bob Oatman. He's a protection and security expert, the author of The Art of Executive Protection, How to Live, Work, and Travel Safely in This Dangerous World. Epstein's got like 20 contacts for this guy. 20 of them. It's crazy. There's a guy named Joe Pagano. Look at this one. This guy does psychology research, vital info behind investments, insider trading, stocks, finance. This guy was thick with Jeffrey Epstein. Very much. And Joe Pagano Jr. is over the Essence Foundation. Just some really, really shady people. Thick as thieves. Goes back with Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein. Goes back to the beginning of Bear Stearns, back when Jeffrey Epstein did that. Lisa Phillips. She was a Ford Models model scout. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into like the Jacques Brunel kind of thing with the whole models and stuff. But anytime you see any of these modeling agencies, and Ford Models kind of legit, but Lisa Phillips did Mugshot Talent Management Agency. It was mugshotmanagement.com and YouTube and stuff like that. And what they were doing is they were always looking for fresh faces. And then she wanted emails and stuff like that. And this somebody had 14 entries in Jeffrey Epstein's black book. Michael Ovitz. Oh, Michael Ovitz. About 20 entries in Jeffrey Epstein's black book. He was a consultant of Virgin Drinks Company. Virgin Drinks was a subsidiary of the Virgin Group owned by Richard Branson, who's also in the book. It marketed Virgin Cola and Virgin Vodka. And Richard Branson doesn't know how he got in the book. Really? And Michael Ovitz, huge relationships with the Bronfman family. And Ovitz was in a 50-50 partnership with Richard Branson and Virgin Group. Now, Steve Bannon ran a talent company with Jeff Quatnitz called The Firm. And the firm went on to purchase Michael Ovitz's artist management group back in 2002. And Bannon and Quatnitz were strategic bankers. And they helped negotiate the purchase of Warner Music from Time Warner. And during this time, Edgar Bronfman, again, the sisters in NXIVM, was brought into the firm as executive chairman. And the sneaker company Pony's also linked to the Circle of Men. And the Warner deal and purchase of Michael Ovitz's management company were collectively $2.6 billion deals. It made them exceptionally wealthy. And Michael Ovitz, by the way, started out in the mailroom of the William Morris Agency with a guy named David Geffen. And the Michael Ovitz co-founded Creative Artists Agency in 1975, served as its chairman until 1995. Then was the president of the Walt Disney Company from October 1995 to January 1997.
Yeah, you heard that right. The Creative Artist Agency.
Now, Bannon, in August 2018, the New York Post, reported that Bannon had been seen entering Epstein's townhouse. Neither Bannon nor Epstein has commented ever on the substance of their meeting. Okay? But when Ivanka Trump condemned Roy Moore's campaign in Alabama, saying there's a special place in hell for people who prey on children, Steve Bannon, who backed Roy Moore, responded, what about the allegations about her dad and that 13-year-old? So Steve Bannon has not always been on the side of Donald Trump. He's only on the side of Donald Trump when it's convenient. But how come Steve Bannon in 2018 was going into Epstein's townhouse? I don't know. That's very, very interesting. In 2018, you guys. Now, Bill Berkman, he's a guy who's in Epstein's black book. He's a wealthy executive whose family established the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard. And he was sued in 2014 by his administrative assistant, who said she was forced to read emails Berkman had sent to a colleague containing pictures of random and unsuspecting women on the street. Creep shots, underskirt, upskirt shots. Then Robin Burley. Now, Robin Burley is a nightclub impresario. His name's all over the black book. Now, Robin Burley, for all of you out there who want some Meghan Markle kind of connections, he owned the club where Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had their first date. It was called 5 Hertford Street. That is where Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had their first date. And the thing about this, and Burley's an interesting character. He has like these facial scars left by a tiger that mauled him at a family friend's private zoo when he was 12. And members of his secretive 5 Hertford Street, also known as 5HS. Leonardo DiCaprio's a member. George and Amal Clooney are members. And so we got that. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. So I'll give you one more. Conrad Black. All over Epstein's book. And he's best known for being sentenced to 42 months in prison for fraud. Then he wrote a book about Trump and then received a pardon. And then Vicky Ward, who profiled Epstein for Vanity Fair in 2003, said that Epstein heavily leaned on Black, who is her ex-husband's uncle, and was her ex-husband's then boss, to try to exert his influence on Ward. So that's our first installment of what will be many. And I will talk to you guys.
So, isn't it funny that NXIVM is based out of New York City as well? the irony behind all this, right? And they were all going to these sex clubs during COVID, and remember Hakeem, Timu Obama was going to it too. And remember, Bannon went to jail for a little while. He came back. Remember, they're taking everybody out. I've got the second one right here. Turn the volume on. I'm waiting for the third one to come out of this. But after this, man, so much stuff that came out. We got to go right to BB, though. Got to go directly there.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Let us talk more about the Epstein elite and how they're just getting away with it. And let's start today with Leon Black. He is a private equity tycoon. His name is found all over Epstein's black book. And once again, like I said in the first episode, I'm not concerned with somebody who just has an email and a phone number in there. I'm really not. Like I said, somebody probably just handed a business card. I'm looking at these people that have 10, 12, 15, 20 entries crossed out, put in, obviously in communication with Jeffrey Epstein all the time. Now, Leon Black is the billionaire co-founder of Apollo Global Management, chairman of MoMA. And Black made Epstein the director of his family foundation in 2001. The foundation continued to list Epstein as director on its tax forms until 2012. That is 4 years. 4 years after he had pleaded guilty to those charges in Florida. Now, the foundation said after the fact, oh, no, he resigned in 2007, and his name just continued to appear on the rolls because of a recording error. Okay, yeah. Well, explain then in 2011 why he was listed as an investor in Environmental Solutions Worldwide, which is a Pennsylvania company, alongside several people close to Black, including his 4 children. Black himself was seen with Epstein at a movie screening just a few months after Epstein finished probation in 2010. Epstein was spotted at a party at Black's home in the Hamptons in 2015. Oh, it was a recording error? Oh, yeah. So this Black guy, up to his ears, knows everything. So why is he doing business with Epstein? Right? Is Epstein blackmailing him? Let's talk about David Blaine. Let's just go to a celebrity. He's all over Epstein's black book. And he put on a private show for Epstein's dinner guests back in 2003. He did card tricks for Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, who we'll talk about in a minute, Mort Zuckerman, who did a whole bunch of deals with Epstein, and Bill Clinton aide Doug Band. The dinner, organized by somebody named Ghislaine Maxwell, and included a group of young women who were introduced as Victoria's Secret models. What were they there for? And they weren't Victoria's Secret models. They were just there because Epstein was providing them to the other ones. Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, all over Epstein's black book. Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire, the private jet enthusiast, the former mayor of New York City, all over Epstein's black book. The Sultan of Brunei. Now, Epstein had at least one meeting with the Sultan when he traveled to Brunei in 2002 with Bill Clinton. Now, the Sultan of Brunei and his brother are famous for their lavish spending, including a collection of 2,500 cars, a $1.5 billion palace. And the Sultan was once sued by Miss USA 1997, who claimed that she had been held as a sex slave. Flavio Briatore, the F1 guy, the convicted card cheat, the race fixture in Formula One, a longtime fugitive in the Virgin Islands. This is a guy who was notorious for hooking up with yachters. And where did he meet them all? Of course, Jeffrey Epstein helped him a lot. Now, one of the things that's crazy is that you had Epstein meeting with all of these people. There was one day in 2014 where Jeffrey Epstein hung out, on the same day, mind you, with Bill Gates, Leon Black, Thomas Pritzker, and Mortimer Zuckerman. And I mentioned the Google co-founder, right? So this is not somebody that wants to see his name on a list. But Sergey Brin, the Google co-founder, was advised by Epstein from 2004 to 2007. Why with Epstein? including guidance on how to set up a tax shelter. Okay, I think Sergey could find a CPA. Okay, but that's not what happened. And Brin had become a client of JP Morgan Chase because Epstein referred him there. And then he held more than $4 billion in accounts there. And Black got set up with the same kind of tax shelter. Now, this is something that was hidden. We didn't know about Sergey Brin until August of 2023 because there was a U.S. Virgin Islands lawsuit against JP Morgan Chase. Now, the former First Lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands, this is where we get into the nitty gritty, how we have government people helping traffic women. And a lot of it was because of this civil lawsuit in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So this former First Lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands, her name is Cecile de Jong. She started working for Epstein in 2000, continued working for him when her husband was serving as governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands from 2007 to 2015. So 2008 is when Epstein was convicted in Florida. And what else she did? She helped arrange visas for some of Epstein's victims. Helped get visas. She connected one woman to a local immigration lawyer, worked to get others student visas by arranging special classes for them at the University of Virgin Islands. She helped them enroll. That's what they did. And then I want to get you this theory. Okay, let's say you're on the left, you're on the right, whatever. Okay, Bill Clinton's on the left, obviously a great friend of Jeffrey Epstein. You have Donald Trump, obviously photographs seen with Jeffrey Epstein quite often. So during the first Trump administration, we didn't really see anything about Epstein other than the fact that Epstein was killed. But we didn't see anybody going after Bill Clinton. Now in the Biden administration, we didn't see anybody going after Donald Trump. Although it probably would have been advantageous for them to do so and to tie him to Jeffrey Epstein. But they didn't. So then we start thinking about, well, maybe this is really into the government. Maybe this is because Epstein has these ties to both Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now, Ehud Barak used to be the Israeli prime minister. He was a regular guest of Epstein's at his Upper East Side townhouse in the years from 2013 to 2017. So this is long after the bad stuff happened. Right? I mean, we already knew. He flew on Epstein's jet. He would come to visit Epstein once a month. Why? You know, he said that Epstein often brought other interesting persons from art or culture, law or science, finance, diplomacy, or philanthropy. He said that he never met Epstein with girls or minors or even adult women in improper context or behavior. So he's not saying that he didn't meet with girls. He's not saying that he didn't meet with minors. He's not saying he didn't meet with adult women. He's just saying there was never really any improper context.
Isn't that so typical of a Jew to do? To completely change the entire language on it to make him seem innocent when he's 110% dead to rights guilty.
Now, Jeffrey Epstein and Saudi Arabia. Okay, well, what we found out was that Jeffrey Epstein used a foreign passport with a fake name to enter several countries in the 1980s. Why would he do that? He said it was because he was Jewish, but he used it to go to the United Kingdom. What would it matter if he was Jewish? To Spain, what would it matter if he was Jewish? Saudi Arabia, okay, but he was found inside a safe, along with $70,000 in cash and 48 loose diamonds. And Epstein's people said, well, he never actually used it. Well, yeah, he did. A lot. Then we have Bill Gates. Okay, Bill Gates, does he control the world? I don't know. But the connection between Epstein and Gates, we're still learning about it. But here's the thing. We are saying that Epstein didn't blackmail anybody with any of his videos or anything like that. That's what the government is trying to pass off to us. That Epstein just didn't do that. He was just doing it for himself. But the thing is, he did blackmail Bill Gates. 100%. Because Bill Gates had an affair with a bridge player named Mila Antonova. This was in the early 2010s. And Epstein used that knowledge. We don't know how he knew about the affair between Bill Gates and Mila Antonova, but he blackmailed Bill Gates because of it. Now, Mila says that Gates is an avid bridge player. He had met her at a tournament in 2010 while Gates was still married to his ex-wife. Then she wanted money to fund a startup that would help people learn the game of bridge online. Now, Boris Nikolic, who's a friend and then scientific advisor to Gates, introduced Mila to Epstein in 2013. And Epstein arranged for Antonova to go to a software coding school. Now, in 2017, after the Gates-Antonova relationship had ended, Epstein emails Bill Gates saying, hey, you know, I paid for Antonova to go to school. You need to pay me back. And Gates was like, okay, how did you know this? Supposedly Gates never paid Epstein, but we don't know that. And Antonova said, I had no idea that Epstein was a criminal or had any ulterior motive. Okay. Then we get to Ron Burkle. Yes, Ron Burkle. He contributes to everybody, and he's also a known person who loves prostitutes and escorts. So why is his name all over Epstein's black book? Why was he in Epstein's private jet? Now, Burkle took humanitarian trips to Africa with Bill Clinton on Epstein's jet. And Burkle's usual means of transport was on a converted Boeing 757 that Bill Clinton called Ron Air, and that Burkle's own circle of young aides privately referred to as Air F1. And here's the thing. There are all kinds of stories about Ron Burkle and hookers. Here's a quote from a book. It was written by Mark Ebner. When I was flown to New York for Ron, we stayed in hotels. In Vegas, I'd stay with him at the mansions, at the MGM, the Palazzos, at the Rio, and those villas at the Mirage. He always had the best of the best. Whenever I would go to Los Angeles to visit, there were day trips, photo shoots I would fall for. On those day trips, we go to the house, and the photographer was awesome. The limo would pick us up from the airport. The best thing is that he would have accounts everywhere. We'd have lunch or go shopping on his accounts. I had a good time with Ron, and we would go to his house, and he had this jacuzzi and would fill it up with Mr. Bubble. I never knew Ron to get rough with girls, but I did know him to be a D. If he wasn't getting what he wanted, he would throw attitude. And the one common thing that Ron had with his friends was that they would watch girls get it on or get, satisfied with their hands or their mouth. They wouldn't actually have sex because they were afraid of AIDS. Yeah. Now, think about this. What was Epstein in jail for, you guys? He was in jail for sex trafficking and conspiracy. Faced up to 45 years in prison. Okay, sex trafficking to whom? Just himself? And what about Ghislaine Maxwell? She's in jail for 20 years for what? Sex trafficking. For Jeffrey Epstein? No. Not at all. Because go back to 2007, when Jeffrey Epstein is facing a 53-page federal indictment. He could have ended up in federal prison for the rest of his life. Federal jail. But there was a breakfast deal that was made, right? By a cabinet member. It was a later cabinet member with a U.S. attorney at the time, and a deal was struck. And what we're going to do is we're going to hide what Epstein's crimes were. We're going to hide the number of people involved. Is he going to serve time in federal jail? No. Just 13 months in the county jail. He gets to leave every day for work release. And what it did was it shut down the FBI probe into whether there were more victims and also the other powerful people who took part in Epstein's crimes. They did it back in 2007 and 2008, and they're doing it now again today. They don't want anybody to know who were the co-conspirators. They don't want to know who was involved in Epstein's crimes. They want no part of it. And then the crazy thing is they didn't even let the victims know that they were doing it. So that way nobody could try and derail this secret agreement that they had with Jeffrey Epstein. All right, you guys, that is it for this one. I promise you so much more next time. I will talk to you guys later.
Yeah, so as you can see watching those, it makes a lot of big difference in everything, doesn't it? Anyways, screen got so big, damn it. One sec, guys. It just doesn't make much sense, does it? But there was a funny name he mentioned in there. The Sultan of Brunei. Why is he so big in this? Remember when we talked about President Trump owning the Princess Allison, right? That was bought off of the Sultan of Brunei because it was Aden Khashoggi's yacht, and he ended up selling it to Trump. But then Trump turned around and sold it to bin Talal, Alawid bin Talal. There's your Saudi Arabia connection. But then, for some reason, Sultan of Brunei took it back. Odd, isn't it? Yeah, I don't think Epstein, Diddy, I think they're small fish in this. Way small. And that's scary. But it's oh, it's right here. Oh, damn it. Why does it do that? So tired of this shit. For some reason the box, when you double click it, it just gets massive. So yeah. BB. Where's he right now? He's still here. Why?
Spain has
well, Viva Spain. Viva Spain. Oh, that's it.
demonstrated that it is a nation that values its own values of human right, its own values of respect for the territorial integrity of some people, and of course, generally for being human. Spain consistently has demonstrated that, and it's this latest update that we're getting from Spain is even the major point here. You know, among all the nations in Europe, Spain has been one of those countries that have been very vocal about the crimes of the Israeli leadership in Palestine. Spain was among the three major European nations that recognized the state of Palestine and actually said that the only solution to the very decade of crisis in the Palestinian Strip, or generally in the occupied Palestine, is only a two-state solution.
The government of Spain will approve the official recognition of Palestine as a state. With this decision, Spain joins the more than 140 countries that already recognize Palestine. This is a historic decision that has a single goal: to contribute to achieving peace between Israelis and Palestinians. The state of Palestine must be viable, with the West Bank and Gaza connected by a corridor and with East Jerusalem as its capital, and must be unified under the legitimate government of the Palestine National Authority. Our position is aligned with the UN Security Council resolutions 242 and 338, and with the position of the European Union. Therefore, we won't recognize change in the 1967 lines other than those agreed to by the party.
And it baffles the mind. Why won't Spain say so? Israel has been recognized as a Jewish state with its own land, while the Arab ones, those who are the other side of the divide, have not been recognized. What is keeping America and other parts of the world to recognize a two-state solution as only panacea to the challenges facing that strip? We cannot really say what the problem is, but 146 countries, including Slovenia, has recognized Palestine. So what's keeping the nation from kicking off? Israel has been, citing lack of reforms on the part of the Palestinians, many other sundry issues which they themselves are engineering. They are the reason why there's no organization among those in Gaza and those of the Palestinians in the West Bank and what have you. If you go to Takram today in the West Bank, it's looking more like Gaza, and there was no October 7 in that area as well. So what's really going on? So they do not want any resistance. They want to perpetuate war, arm some people, and then claim they're terrorists, and then go into those places and keep demolishing houses, demolishing homes, making ways for more settlement against international law. Now, Spain is saying enough is enough.
También le puntualizo una cosa, señor Rufián. Nosotros no comerciamos con un Estado genocida. No lo hacemos, señoría. Y creo que el otro día, desde esta tribuna,
And his name's Pedro Sanchez. Vote for Pedro.
Quité precisamente de qué estábamos hablando cuando se hablaba de algunas cosas que no se ajustan a la verdad. Y finalmente, señoría, hombre, decir que nosotros hemos estado con un silencio cómplice ante los ataques, perdone que lo diga, llevamos sufriendo los 7 años.
Now, the Spanish National Court has, for the first time in the history of the Israeli terrorist government, opened an investigation, not just an investigation, a criminal investigation against the leadership of the Israeli extremist government. Okay, now, this criminal investigation is unique in its type because unlike the ICC criminal investigation, this is more tied to an immediate action that the Israeli government took some months ago. Now, what is that action? You could recall last month, some folks from, Europe said they wanted to break the Gaza siege. This siege was imposed by the IDF, both on land, on the sea, and any other entry point that could come to the aid of the suffering and starving people of Palestine. The case was filed under the principle of universal jurisdiction by Spanish citizen Sergio Taribio and the Committee for Solidarity with the Palestinian cause. It alleges that Israeli forces uses drones, tear gas, and carried out illegal detention of civilians in what it describes as a part of a broader pattern of violation tied to the ongoing conflict in Gaza. The court ruling requests cooperation with the International Criminal Court, ICC, and frames the assault in the context of the genocide in Gaza. It marks the first time Spain has opened a formal investigation into Israeli leadership over the war in Gaza. Now, as I said, this is a major step in the fight against impunity. When states fail to fulfill their obligations, it is up to civil society to activate justice as an ethical, legal, and political tool against horror. If upheld, the investigation could restrict Netanyahu and other Israeli officials' ability to travel to Europe without risking arrest warrants linked to the case. The Israeli government has not yet issued an official response to this development. Let's listen to the speech made by Prime Minister Sanchez, that's of Spain, when he called for the first time the government in Tel Aviv terrorist and said they were committing genocide in Gaza.
La gravísima crisis humanitaria que padece Gaza desde octubre de 2023 ha dejado más de 50.000 muertos, 100.000 heridos y 2 millones de desplazados internos. Son cifras escalofriantes, inaceptables, que no solo vulneran cualquier noción básica del principio de humanidad, sino que violan los fundamentos básicos del derecho internacional y del derecho internacional humanitario. Hacia la paz en la región es la implementación de la solución de los dos Estados. Con ese propósito, España reconoció al Estado de Palestina hace un año y hoy quiero instar nuevamente a otros países a avanzar en el reconocimiento del Estado de Palestina.
All right, that speech was made at a very critical time in the life of Palestine. It was at a time when the world turned completely against the whole of Palestine. Israel blockaded everywhere, stopped food and water. People were starving, people were looking for water to drink, and bombs continued to rain on Palestinians every day. This is also coming as we got a very sad news that one of the rapporteurs, the Special Human Rights Rapporteur representing the UN in Palestine, was sanctioned. Between Netanyahu and this woman that advocates for human rights, who should be sanctioned?
It is absolutely barbaric that we're in the year 2025. We are watching this in 4K on our phones. The audacity, the belligerence, the arrogance of countries to think that this is acceptable. This is the new precedent that we're setting for the globe. If we don't rise up and stop Israel from committing this horrific genocide in plain day, what is next? What message is that telling the other countries of the world that they can do lawlessly? Does law mean nothing? Does human rights mean nothing? This is a moment that is a testament to the human race. If we do not band together and do everything that we can, like Jeremy Scahill said, what will be next will be even worse. And I don't want to live in a world like that. And I don't think any of us do. And so we have to motivate each other to stop this atrocity, because it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And every day people die needlessly. And every victim of this genocide is a whole world lost. And I don't want that on my shoulders. I don't want the blood on my hands anymore as an American citizen. It's my government subsidizing this, and I cannot sit idly by and watch this for one more day without shouting from the rooftops, stop it! Stop! The only solution is a complete and total end to this horrific policy, sanctions on Israel, accountability for all of the war criminals, mass re-education of the horrific genocidal mentality and mania that has taken over Israeli society, and a full democratization of the state, integration of the Palestinians as equal players. That, and only that, is when we can see true peace come to Palestine, Israel, and the Middle East at large, because we know that this is the crux of so much tension and strife in the region.
All right, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show today. I really appreciate your time, and I would appeal for your support, to support.
Sorry, guys, we're gonna cut that one a little short because oh, here it is. So I saw let me pull this up real quick.
Hey folks, we've got
Stop. Let's see, hold on a second. One second here. Yeah. All right, so what I did was, this new hustle bitch, it came out 8 hours ago. Now, we've got some stuff to talk about this one, but I'm skipping forward to 1205. Cute number. Because this has to do with Rubio. When you see why this is big, I think we did figure this out. Scary, but I think so. Also, Kristi Noem came out today and said that flights, you don't have to take off your shoes anymore. Wow, what a joy, right? So I'm going to play this, this Rubio part, and then we're going to go back to our timeline, right?
Smile. Still think this is just about saving time? Now, since we're talking about AI, have you heard that someone used Marco Rubio's AI voice to call multiple foreign ministers?
An imposter raising security questions at the highest levels of our government. The Washington Post exclusively reporting that a Marco Rubio imposter is using an AI voice to call high-level officials.
Authorities say that the perpetrator sent text and voice messages to prominent figures, including 3 foreign ministers and a U.S. governor, beginning in mid-June.
I don't need to tell you how much damage someone can cause by impersonating Marco Rubio, especially in the middle of a conflict. This is extremely concerning and once again reminds us why we need serious laws to control AI. Now, I want to end this video by sharing a pretty strange story about space. A space capsule.
All right. I just wanted to show that part right there Because the irony in this, right? Remember we were discussing boom weeks? So, if we look at the Rubio model, right? 3 foreign ministers, but 1 U.S. governor, right? So, if you notice the weeks, right? 6/8/25 to 6/14/25. That'd be in the middle of June, right? The same time frame they gave us about the AI voice, the messages, right? Then there were 3 foreign ministers. The funny thing is that everything has to go in sequential order, right? So why wasn't 2 mentioned? Because that was the No Kings protest and the King's birthday parade. You skip the 2 weeks, 6/15 to 6/28, those 2 weeks. Then you come on 6/29 all the way to 7/19, which are your 3 foreign ministers. Little crazy there. And there's more. One second, guys. 1 second. Oh. Anybody that lives overseas, well, you know what? We can check it out right now. Because yeah, we'll check it out right now. Let's see. How hot is Jesus Christ. All right. All right. This just got way fucking weird. Way weird. Because remember, in the Keys of Enoch, right? China will suffer nemesis upon nemesis. Right? Stop. You guys not gonna believe this one. Oh, and also on YouTube, we have Lisa. Happy birthday. Hell yeah. Keep plugging, kid, because I would say we're just getting started, but man, we're just getting started. But yeah, we're making some headway because this is absolutely batshit crazy. Now, it says China boils. Ground hits 77 degrees Celsius. Roads crack. Birds collapse from heat stroke. Right? Now, I'm going to show the video. But guess how hot 77 degrees Celsius is? 170 degrees. Is that normal? No. Remember, they were getting all the snow. They're getting all the flooding. Now you have nemesis upon nemesis. Everything's playing out.
我上学呀，我热多了。
While southern China is suffering from floods, everywhere is submerged in water with countless losses of people and property. Some places in northern China are suffering from scorching heat, with temperatures in many areas reaching 77 degrees Celsius, making it possible to cook outdoors without a stove. Many people exclaimed, "What great crimes has the CCP committed that the Chinese people have to suffer these severe natural disasters?" These past few days, the weather in Beijing has been truly strange. On my way home from work, I saw smoke rising in the distance. My heart skipped a beat. It turned out to be an electric scooter on fire. All I could say was, "Oh my God, it's so hot in Shanghai that things are literally catching fire." I had only walked a short distance and already couldn't take it. Just how hot is it in Shanghai? As people step out of the subway station, they have to stand in the shade to collect themselves before daring to go out. The weather in Hebei is also unbearable. Temperatures of 39–40 degrees. Is the sky trying to roast us alive? It's so hot I feel like I'm about to evaporate. Oh man, it's hot enough to kill someone. Seriously, this isn't a joke. Heat stroke can be life-threatening. In this kind of weather, everyone needs to be especially alert for heat exhaustion. I ask you, are you feeling the heat? The extreme temperatures are sweeping across the country. Zhejiang, Jiangsu, Anhui, Hunan, Jiangxi, Guangdong. The entire country is basically in grill mode. Chengdu has issued the earliest heat warning in its history, with temperatures soaring past 40 degrees Celsius. On the morning of July 4th, at 10 a.m., Guzheng, Hefei, and Lingbi in Anhui became the hottest places in the country. Ground temperatures in West Lake, Hangzhou, exceeded 55 degrees Celsius, and the local meteorological bureau had to clarify, this is not an exaggeration. In Shandong, even the elderly are voluntarily turning on the air conditioner, which tells you just how cold-tolerant they normally are. Everyone at work today was complaining about the heat. It's 30 degrees at night, 40 during the day, and even if you're standing still, sweat just pours off you. What's scarier is, this heat wave has only just begun. I just want to ask one thing. Has Wuhan's weather been taken over by the tropics? Every day it's 34, 38, 39 degrees, like a car stuck in high gear. At 1:36 p.m. on July 5th Beijing time, the city's thermometer read a scorching 50 degrees. Since early July, mainland China has entered a rare, widespread heat wave. As of the afternoon of July 4th, 754 provinces, cities, and counties had issued heat warnings, with temperatures in many places exceeding 40 degrees. Such extreme weather not only harms human health, but also causes animals to suffer from heat stroke. At noon on July 5th, the surface temperature on Jianghan Pedestrian Street in Wuhan exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. A video recorded by a local resident quickly went viral online. In the video, a gray zebra dove lay limp on the scorching pavement, its wings spread weakly, its beak opening and closing as if gasping for air. Someone poured water into a bottle cap for it to drink. After some time being cared for, the bird eventually recovered and flew away. How should I describe today's heat in Wuhan to you? Even my grandmother turned on the air conditioner today. Someone even said an 80-year-old man in their village, who had never bought an air conditioner in his life, finally had to get one this year. At 38 degrees C, going to the bathroom means using 10 tissues, 9 of which are just to wipe off sweat. Who can understand that? Even with the AC on, it's still hot. In Hangzhou, with temperatures at 40 degrees Celsius, just look at what I've been grilled into. Walk 3 steps, and a wave of sweat breaks out. It's really unbearable. This is the searing 40-degree heat of today. My phone was so hot I had to stick a cooling patch on it. Do you want to know just how hot it is in Jinan? Look, this thermometer is only showing the limit of what it can handle, not the actual heat in Jinan. And summer there is just beginning. What about Beijing? It's so hot I thought I was standing next to an AC exhaust or right by a car's tailpipe. I figured walking a few steps might help. But no, it stayed just as hot no matter how far I walked. Touching my skin felt like it was burning. Just saying a few words made my mouth and nose feel like they were full of hot air. I swear I'm dying from the heat. I was born and raised in the Northeast, and I've never experienced heat like this before. Changchun is now 35 degrees Celsius. Is that even normal? Come stand outside in the Northeast for half an hour. Forget about getting a tan, your skin will be coated in an oily paste. I barely walked 300 meters and was soaked in sweat. It's honestly terrifying. When I got to Shanghai, I thought I was going to lose it. There's a video showing Wuhan's weather. The dryness is just unbelievable. And what about Henan? Look at this electric fan. The sunlight passing through the tin roof outside has heated it so much it's been distorted by the heat. Let me show you my makeup. It's like it's been through a literal storm surge. This year, Shanghai is experiencing an unprecedented heat wave that has broken multiple records. In June alone, there were 9 days of extreme heat, the first time this has happened in 150 years. In news reports, they used just 4 words to describe this phenomenon: rare in history. In Wuhan, around 1 p.m., the sun was so intense. Even eggs got cooked. They actually got cooked. The weather forecast said it was 38 degrees Celsius in Wuhan that day, so someone tried to see if eggs could be fried without using oil. The result? The egg stuck firmly to the scorching hot pan, and they had to crack a second one next to it. After a while, bubbles began forming on the surface of the egg, and it ended up fully cooked. Just sprinkle a little salt and pepper, and it was ready to eat. According to Chinese media, on July 4th, on a rural road in Zhu County, Shangqiu City, Henan Province, a black car was driving along when the driver had to slow down to avoid a tricycle. At that moment, the concrete road ahead suddenly cracked, arched up, and split horizontally due to excessive heat, forming a large fissure and kicking up clouds of dust, forcing the driver to brake suddenly. Many netizens believe the cause was the lack of expansion joints in the concrete, which gave no room for thermal expansion. However, others argued that even with expansion joints, such extreme temperatures would still cause the road to crack. Recently, much of China has been experiencing severe heat waves. According to China's National Meteorological Center, high temperatures are covering southern North China, the Huanghai region, Jianghuai, Jiangnan, and the Sichuan Basin. Over 2 million square kilometers are experiencing temperatures above 35 degrees C, with some areas in Henan, Shandong, Anhui, and Zhejiang exceeding 40 degrees C. In Bengbu, Anhui, one resident used 3 thermometers to measure the outdoor temperature. At 10:54 a.m. on July 5th, all 3 thermometers were placed in the same spot. One read over 50 degrees, nearly 60 degrees, the round one had maxed out, and the long thermometer also hit its limit of 50 degrees and went off the scale. Under the scorching midday sun in Wuhan, surface temperatures of various objects were recorded at alarming levels. Metal railings at 55 degrees, trash bins at 57 degrees, and cars parked under the sun reached 77 degrees. Even the underside of electric scooters hit 77 degrees C. One person exclaimed, "Oh my God, Wuhan's weather is insane!" Despite that, the official weather forecast only reported 39 degrees C, prompting many to question, is that the air temperature or the body temperature of the news anchor? Some even joked, maybe the presenter had a 39 degrees C fever and mistook it for the weather. Locals warned tourists, Wuhan's 39 degrees C is not the same as 39 degrees C elsewhere. You'll feel sick the moment you step off the bus. Walk less than 100 meters and your shoe soles will start to burn your feet. Some even said the heat was so extreme their feet felt cool because their shoes had melted in puddles of water. People called it the toughest 300 meters of the year. Residents advised anyone planning to visit Shanghai to cancel their trip. With temperatures hitting 40 degrees, everyone was complaining, it's hot enough to die. No one dared go outside. A Shanghai local said, the smell of Shanghai in summer is the smell of burning. Just look at me, and I'm standing in the shade. Guys, just how hot is it in Shandong? Someone asked. This frying pan was taken out at around noon, and now it's 2:40 p.m., just a little over 2 hours later. Let's crack an egg and see. No need for fire. The egg fries on its own. This kind of heat is way beyond tolerance. Right now, people in mainland China are truly living in a boiling hot hell. On top of the prolonged heat wave affecting many provinces, half of the country is also battling devastating floods.
So that means that the seats of those mopeds were like, what, 200 degrees? And oh man, not good, not good, not good. So I do have one more video because then I'm gonna get ready for Sunday, because that one's just gonna be, I mean, beyond emotional. You know, Dean and I are still livid about this. You know, fucking rotten, just pissed. Pissed. Oh, here you go. I mean, there's so much, and plus, the show we did with Terry, we started going down those rabbit holes, and imagine my shock where it goes. Always back to them. This one's 4 minutes, but it's great. Irish. Definitely just stand up for your shit.
And delegitimize and ultimately bring about the destruction. The only country in the Middle East where you can get away with that. And any other country in the Middle East, you would have presumably died in a dungeon by now, like we see in Syria or Saudi or elsewhere. Now, I know that you, as someone who has...
just want to say, it's a question, not a speech.
As someone who is representing...
Now, the person talking is Ilian Pape. He's an Israeli, but he's one of those that he doesn't believe, he sees through the bullshit. Sees through all of it. And he knows Israel's doing fucking bad. He's like, he's trying to out him too.
Hadash on the communist side. You also hate Israel because it's a capitalist success story.
Capitalist success story.
As very prosperous.
They're like, oh god, it's like this dude just let out a big fart and the whole room's like, oh come on, man. Oh, get that vile away. Get that vile rhetoric, that vile Zionist propaganda away from. Get that horrid thing away. He's like, you're just hating on Israel because it's a capitalist success story, and all the Islamicists smell bad. And Yisrael Chai. I love how he's an Irish Zionist. Is this real? How can you be Irish and be, especially Irish, and be a Zionist?
We have 5 minutes.
How do you not understand your own history, Jamie O'Mahony?
Thankfully, Israel will exist, prosperous and free, long after we are gone. Long after we are gone. And I want to ask, who all you like? I'm a great time.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, shit. Oh, no.
I know you. I do know you. I do.
Oh, man.
I have free speech spear. I'm not doing anything.
I don't know, for some reason, I'm getting a vision of Will Ferrell. Rip his off!
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Out! Don't touch me! What are you touching me for? I didn't do anything! Out! What are you doing?
Oh my god.
What are you doing? You're taking his own problems. Sorry? Okay. Can you come out?
Get out.
It's over for you.
Get out of here. Zionists. Oh, they're... Oh no. They're like, dude, this is the metaphor that needs to happen on the world stage. That guy is Israel, and the rest of the countries are hauling Israel away. It's like a perfect microcosmic metaphor of what actually needs to happen at a world scale, on the world scale. Wow. Oh no, but the Zionists will definitely use this as an example of their victimhood on display. Look at that anti-Semitic crowd. This is what you call a Section 2 assault in Ireland. Oh really? Richard Finley, what do you call the destruction in whole or in part of an entire civilization. What do you call that, Richard? You're sad that your little Zionist waving flag friend got shut down at a public forum? Ilan Pappé is an Israeli, by the way. Ilan Pappé is an Israeli historian who's actually anti-Zionist. Amazing analogy, actually. Yeah, with the world. Yeah, Irish people are awesome. Yes. Well, I mean, they are victims of colonialism. You know, they should understand. They have solidarity with the Palestinians. That's why it's called Palestinian. Of course, but they use that derogatory. I don't think that's a derogatory term. There is a solidarity between the Irish and the Palestinians, just like there's a solidarity with the with the Vietnamese and the Palestinians, and we can go around the world if you like. Victim of imperialism at the hands of the United States or the previous British Empire. I think you can draw a parallel, draw an analogy to what's happening in Palestine. It's the same material relationship, you know?
Yep. I mean, we've been saying it's like, hey, and all started with that Bible. Funny. I tell you what. Also, you know what? We're going to watch this. It'll be the last clip of the day. But yeah, this just came out. This right here, Candace Owens is laughing her ass off. Guess who got outed?
Oh, wow. Wow.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. One of my all-time favorite things is watching President Trump on diplomatic trips because it's funny the way world leaders act around him. They're quite nervous and intimidated, but nothing worse than what happens when he goes and manhandles the globalist beta poster child of a weak, limp-wristed world leader, Emmanuel Macron in France. That's a yikes. That's a bit of a manhandle right there. Look at the full alpha grip. Yeah, okay. Well, here's what I think is quite interesting about all of this is that Emmanuel Macron is used to getting clearly manhandled on camera. This is what happened to Emmanuel Macron when he was trying to get off his presidential plane in Vietnam. Got manhandled. By who? By Brigitte. Slapped right in the freaking face. Both hands. Brigitte. Who was Emmanuel Macron's school teacher, and they admittedly met when he was underage. That's just totally normal. Our globalist leadership class, they're great people. Brigitte was very angry and, well, clearly has a testosterone problem here. Goodness gracious, look at that. Both hands to the face. Very aggressive. Watch Macron's wife Brigitte smack him in the face. They arrive in Vietnam, refuse to hold his hand. Macron manhandled by wife on camera. Total embarrassment. Macron's office claimed this was a moment of togetherness. His wife decked him in the face. It's funny the way that Macron is clearly self-conscious about this. You can see him nervously ticking inside of the Oval Office meeting here. He's not a confident man. And his party has lost an enormous amount of power in France. It's hanging on by a thread in what many are calling rigged elections. And it's not popular for a reason. Everybody in France knows it's creepy. They know it's creepy for this teacher who's, I think, 30 years older than Emmanuel Macron to be in a, well, what some are calling a Big Mike situation. Here we go. Rigged elections.
Now, observe how Macron sits.
And it's not popular for a reason. Everybody in France knows it's creepy. They know it's creepy for this teacher who's, I think, 30 years older than Emmanuel Macron to be in a, well.
Huh. You ladies, like, cross their legs when they sit. Odd.
What some are calling a Big Mike situation. Here we go. Women who claimed Brigitte Macron was a man are cleared of defamation. Does this mean what I think it means? Let's read. 2 women convicted of defaming French First Lady Brigitte Macron by saying that she was born a man are today sensationally cleared on appeal. Okay. Judges sitting in the Paris Appeals Court on Thursday ruled that 2 individuals who were bloggers had every legal right to make the allegation. Both claimed that they were subjected to intimidation by authorities. Ultra-protected members of the Paris elite establishment tried to cover up a state secret. Sounds shockingly familiar to what's happening in this country right now. Let's move on. Lawyers for Ms. Macron, 72. Goodness gracious. Yeah, so 30 years older than Emmanuel. So creepy. Indicated that she was devastated by the development, that she'd be taking the case to a higher court in France. Really, why fight this? Why fight this battle? It's a really strange thing, this. Why fight this battle so savagely? You know, she keeps trying to sue Candace Owens and so on for talking about this. Like, people talk about garbage all the time. Like, people talk about this channel, me. They say everything they can possibly say under the sun about President Trump. A lot of it's absurd and ridiculous. Like, why fight this battle so savagely? It's very strange, isn't it? Doth protest too much, right? Kind of Shakespearean almost. Ms. Macron is currently returning from a state visit with her husband, who was not in court to hear the judgment. They appeared on a 4-hour YouTube video in December 2021, and they claimed that Brigitte was born a baby boy called Jean-Michel Troneau in 1953. This is, in fact, the name of Brigitte's brother, and Ms. Macron was called Brigitte before her first marriage. The defendants also claimed that Brigitte's first husband had never actually existed before his reported death in 2020. Well, I mean, this is just crazy. And crazy interesting. A judge sitting in Normandy originally fined the 2 women the equivalent of $1,700 each and found them guilty of libel. Following their appeals, though, their fines were reduced. Now neither will have to pay anything, and they're free to go. Okay, so now it says we're acquitted, and they expressed great pleasure with the judgment. The 2 women who were present at the judgment was announced were sued for defamation by Ms. Macron in 2022. Today's court ruling states that 18 passages of the video under the consideration do not constitute defamation and instead represent good faith free speech. It comes as Ms. Macron finds herself increasingly under attack, not just in France but across the world. Becoming Brigitte, a controversial book about her personal life written by a journalist, Xavier Possard, is stirring up controversy and theories with American influencer Candace Owens. It comes as 4 male defendants prepare their cyber harassment trial in Paris Correctional Court, being accused of likening Ms. Macron to a child abuser. But she was his teacher. And this is like not going away because, well, people don't like this kind of stuff. This is a clip that I find absolutely and totally shocking. It's a clip from CBS News, of all people. And CBS News going out and saying, yeah, this relationship's really wrong and creepy. And we should really, be bothered by this, right? Watch this.
Gaslighting us. Every politician gaslights us all day long. Yesterday, though, Macron said the video showed the couple bickering and joking around, he said
Joking around, mistake number 2. That's not a joke.
He said the incident had been overblown into some sort of geoplanetary catastrophe. No,
It's
just
not
you got
a catastrophe.
You got
but we
shoved
did
in the face.
No, by your wife.
By
We
your
caught
wife.
you in a moment that clearly Mrs. Macron was not happy with Mr. Macron.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think
For
this is
whatever
why you
reason.
should not marry your high school teacher. I mean, I don't know. Something about that, like maybe who knows? What do you guys say?
Clearly there's something
going on.
Somebody.
Lavash.
I'll leave that one alone.
Somebody.
Oh yeah, but you're ready to eat a guac or whatever that thing.
Good for you. Maybe you shouldn't marry your high school teacher. Look, good for you. Way to go. Way to go. You know, you're reaching major problems here. Where like the entire facade of the creepy lives of these people is under major attack. Is this why, again, is it all tied to the Epstein list? You know, he was in France all the time. So these people have such creepy, weird lives. Here we go. This is the independent journalist who sort of broke this story and wrote the Becoming Brigitte story. On July 25th, Paris Court of Appeal acquitted the individuals who were sued by Brigitte for video broadcasts, which they claimed that Brigitte was born a man. In January 2022, Brigitte Macron announced her intention to sue for defamation. They appealed. They've been acquitted, which means the court has found the defendant not guilty of any offense. It's a major victory. Despite all the media vociferous denial and blame, Brigitte Macron has obtained no convictions for defamation against those who say that she was born a man. Brigitte Macron is the wife to Emmanuel Macron. They met in 1992 when the French president was 14 years old. Ugh. Creepy, man. Good for them. You know, way to go. You wanted a public life and a big public profile. You wanted to be famous, whatever the hell you are. And, well, now you got it, right? Now you got your fame, okay? So what comes with that is people are going to ask questions about you and your creepy relationship with your former student here. And they're going to really wonder about it because it's very odd. It's creepy. It makes people's skin crawl. We have no idea just how weird the story gets. I have an idea. I'll redirect you to Candace's channel because she's been doing reporting on this for such a long time, and there's so many different angles, right, on this. It's really peculiar, but like I'll end by saying this: you signed up for this. You're the ones who are the powerful world leaders. You don't get to veil yourself in some little cloak and say, like, don't come after me. No, don't leave Brittany alone. You don't get to leave Brittany alone. Leave Brigitte alone. You don't get to do that. If you're going to live some creepy, some of the creepy, dark personal life, some twisted, warped, strange little, like, personal life, and then you want everyone to pay for your private jets and for your palaces that you live in, you want the taxpayer to do that? The taxpayer has every damn right to ask about that warped, creepy personal life, to find out what kind of a person you are. And oftentimes the people who seek the most power are the ones who are the most broken and the most effed up. That's just a matter of fact. The people who are pathological. Most of us just kind of want to live like normal lives, right? The people that are so ravenous and craven and corrupted that they can reach levels of power like that, they're creepy and weird. I've seen too much of them. I've seen too many of these people, right, in this profession. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And you know what? This is what you asked for. So there you go. Brigitte. Poor Benny. See ya.
On 7/10, no less. The irony in it all. So I'm going to skip the music tonight because he's got a lot of stuff to do. Get all the stuff ready for Phil on Sunday because, yeah, this is wrong. Wrong on so many levels, and we're gonna make sure that we make it right. I don't know how, but so also the other video that we did yesterday is up on WeNotMe as well. If you want to watch that too, the Crankers Pit from last night, and And we will have more communist and Jew shit for you guys coming up because, well, it always goes back to them. Always. Always. So, want to thank everybody for stopping in. And again, happy birthday, Lisa. Keep on plugging. Keep on plugging. And we will catch you guys on Sunday.